stop your
Yep.
video. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
So Anu, you are live on YouTube right now, and the webinar is also started. We already have 24 attendees.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to 2 fun-filled days of the ASEI National Convention. The year has turned out very differently, but as engineers, I believe that each and every one of us know how to make the best use of these opportunities. Well, engineer is a verb. Remember that, which means that it's action-oriented, and it's a key way we look at life. And engineers, I see them as problem solvers and also creators. And every time there is a crisis or a major problem, there are opportunities that lead to improvements. And it goes back to the age-old adage that necessity is the mother of invention. And when the world was battling the pandemic, who did the politicians look at when they needed help to deal with the shortage of PPE? It's you. It's an engineer. You're going to experience 2 days of marvel with some amazing engineers, technologists from across the nation, sharing their stories, their experiences that has definitely made the world a better place for you, for me, for the entire human race. This harmony can go on forever. So before I invite the president of the ASCI National, just a quick housekeeping items. All of you in the audience will remain muted during the presentation, so please don't struggle to unmute yourself. But we would love to have your comments and questions, so please use the chat box that you see to communicate. In order to have an uninterrupted presentation, we would request you to put your questions in the Q&A box anytime during the presentation or right after. We will have folks look at it, we'll filter them, and we will definitely get to you. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll post the questions to our speakers at the end of the presentation. And today's webinar is going to be recorded. We'll be able to share the link with you sometime later this week. But we welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. And you can also visit us at aseiusa.org. And you can also join us on YouTube. You can go to aseiusa.org and click the YouTube button right on the header of the website. Now, what are we waiting for? Well, let's kickstart the day with one of my dear friends, the ever charming Jwalant Lakhia, president of ASEI.
Thank you very much, Anu, for a warm introduction. I know we are in safe hands with you for next 2 days, and thank you for your help. So, on behalf of American Society of Engineers of Indian Origin, ASEI, I want to welcome everyone to our 33rd annual convention. The theme of our convention is Global Engineering and Technology, or get2020. I hope all of you are having a safe 2020 in these unprecedented times. This is the 37th year of ASEI. We have held our annual convention almost every year. Usually, our conventions are held in person, hosted by one of our chapters in either East Coast or West Coast. We decided to switch to a virtual convention this year due to the obvious challenges we all are facing. The objective of this event is to provide a forum to promote and share advancements related to latest cutting-edge innovations and technologies across various engineering disciplines. To that end, we have planned 2 days of sessions featuring many distinguished speakers from various technical and engineering fields. We are very grateful to all speakers and session owners for taking time out of their busy schedules, even during a weekend. We will have 6 youth finalists showcasing their work in engineering and science later today. We are going to recognize several individuals for their dedication, hard work, and exemplary contribution in their respective fields. We will also acknowledge those who have done extraordinary work and service to support ASEI. I really appreciate all who have registered for this convention. Your participation encourages us to keep planning for events like this. I am also thankful to all our life members, regular members, sponsors, and well-wishers. If you are not a member, please consider becoming one at your earliest convenience. Our life member is only $250, and our annual membership is only $30. This convention would not have been possible without a strong team. So Bhavesh Joshi is our convention co-chair. Rakesh Patel is also our convention co-chair. Piyush Malik is conventional content, and Vatsala Upadhyay, she is our convention technology chair. Along with this convention team, we have a strong national board members team who is helping. So obviously, I mentioned earlier, Bhavesh Joshi is our vice president, Rakesh is our treasurer, Ashok Madan is secretary and ASEI Circle president. Dr. Thomas Abraham is our national board director and chair of our awards committee. Suresh Ladwa, our director, Anand Sankar, director, Radha Krishnan, director, and Shafiq Bandagi, who is a director, and finally Venkat Gurunathan, who is also a director of our national board. We are also supported by our local chapter presidents and their teams, and Piyush Malik, who is our ASEI Silicon Valley president, Vatsala Upadhyay, ASEI Michigan president, Aaron Guman, ASEI Seattle president, Ashish Mehta, who is our ASEI San Diego president, and Sumedha Mohan from ASEI Washington, DC area. So, I also want to talk about our founder, Dr. Hari Bindal. He was a member of our national board as well. Hariji passed away a few weeks ago, and he was very excited to see us hosting this event on the day of his birthday. So a few things about Hariji. After establishing ASEI in 1983, his passion, drive, and vision for ASEI has resulted in making us one of the oldest and largest organizations in US that focuses on providing a strong forum to technical community of Indian origin. He supported ASEI financially by sponsoring many initiatives such as conventions, student scholarships, and service awards. He was recipient of many local, national, and international awards, including the prestigious Pravasi Bharatiya Samman in 2017 from President of India, and the Pravasi UP Ratna Award in 2019 from the Governor of Uttar Pradesh. Other than ASEI, Dr. Bindal served numerous Indian American social, cultural, political, and religious organizations in many different capacities. His passion for selfless community service was appreciated by many across India and US. ASEI was very fortunate to have Dr. Bindal as a mentor, guide, and a visionary. And more on Hariji's legacy will be featured during ASEI award session tomorrow on December 6th. With that, I will pass this back to Anu and look forward to a great convention today and tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. And it's not new because India has been contributing to the fields of science and technology since ancient times. You and I know that. Even today, what we term as traditional knowledge is actually scientific reasoning, right? A quick trivia for all you engineers out there. Which civilization was the world's first to build planned towns? Especially with underground drainage, air cooling architecture, hydraulic engineering. Do you even know which one is it? It's the half the size of Europe. It's the Indus Valley civilization. Yes. So half the size of Europe, imagine. So Aryabhatta, Kanad, Jayadev, and flash forward to Vinod Dham, Ajay Bhatt, Ruchi Sangvi, who's Facebook's first female engineer, Amit Singhal, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, we can just bring the names on. Such significant contributions. So here you're going to be listening to a story of an individual. So put your ASEI hands together and welcome the man who makes Magna so special. Deval Desai serves as Vice President and India Country Head at Magna International, a global automotive supplier that designs, develops, and manufactures components and systems for the world's leading automakers. And in this position, Desai is responsible for digital marketing, strategic business development, and continued expansion in India, and serves as one of the senior representatives for Magna in India. And Mr. Desai is an accomplished engineering professional with more than 28 years of demonstrated success in operations management, strategic business development, and rejuvenating existing lines of business. And allow me to welcome Mr. Desai to kickstart the ASEI National Convention 2020 with our very first segment, Contribution of Indian Technologists.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Anu. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our West Coast audience. Today's keynote topic is an interesting one and relevant to this year's ASEI National Convention theme, Global Engineering and Technology. Before we dive in, I'd like to give you a quick overview of Magna. Headquartered in North America, we are a technology company, one of the world's largest supplier to the automotive industry. We have over 165,000 associates and 346 sites located in 27 countries, and our annual sales in 2019 were $40 billion. Based on automotive news rankings, we are number one in North America and number 3 largest globally based on sales. Given the topic of today's keynote, I wanted to quickly touch on how we approach technology and innovation. You know how rigorous our industry safety standards are, especially for durability and performance. I can drop my cell phone and crack the screen, but automotive technology needs to withstand the harshest weathers of Calgary and the hottest summers of Death Valley. Our customers often come to us with ideas or technology they have seen outside of automotive, whether it's academia, startup, or other industries. This is because of our ability to auto-qualify, which means we can take the best technology from other industries and bring it to our customers. Our Icon radar, for example, was designed for military applications, and we are adapting it for autonomous driving. Our Rohini JV is working on auto-qualifying micro-LED technology from the consumer space that is incredibly efficient and flexible. We are adapting dexterous robots that were being used for high-precision surgery and putting them in our manufacturing facilities. Our innovation and manufacturing expertise comes from a complete understanding of the vehicle. We offer modular solutions for every system and part, as well as full vehicle assembly. Our body and chassis portfolio covers the structural backbone of a vehicle, from complex assemblies such as body side structures to chassis frame rails that are foundation for many of the trucks and SUVs. Our exteriors portfolio includes lift gates, door modules, front-end modules, active aerodynamic systems, running boards, ceiling trim, and engineered glass. Our powertrain portfolio includes electrification and hybrid technologies, transmissions, and AWD four-wheel drive systems. Magna Electronics provides leading technologies for advanced driver assistance systems, as well as automated driving to secure connectivity and vehicle electrification. Our mechatronics portfolio includes latching systems, door modules, and power closures. Magna Mirrors is a recognized leader in interiors and exterior mirrors, actuators, and door handles. Magna Lighting includes exterior lighting as well as auxiliary lamps. Our Magna Seating solutions feature complete seat systems, structural products, as well as foam and trim. And lastly, our Magna Steyr Group is the world's leading brand-independent engineering and manufacturing partner for full vehicles. The Mercedes G-Wagon, the Toyota Supra, and BMW Z4, as well as the Jaguar I-Pace EV SUV are some of the vehicles manufactured by Magna Steyr. A moment of pride for all of us and relevant to today's topic is the recent announcement of Swami Kotagiri taking over as CEO of Magna effective January 1. Swami is our current president and a 21-year Magna veteran With an engineering background, he has also served in various leadership positions, including CTO and president of Magna Electronics, Magna Powertrain, and our Power and Vision segment. Swami has been instrumental in transforming Magna into a technology company, and I'm excited for the next phase of Magna's growth as a mobility company under his leadership. Now let's take a look at what is the impact and contribution of India to science and tech that impacts our daily lives and humanity overall. Most of you are aware that the numbers that we all use today are an Indian invention. Basically, this stands for the largest human invention of all time. From teaching the world to count to making the best steel in the world, India was actively contributing to pioneering breakthroughs long before the modern world evolved. While some of these groundbreaking contributions have been acknowledged, many of them are unknown to most, and I hope to take you through some of the profound inventions that have and will continue to shape the future. We will close by reviewing trends that will define life after Corona, the tech that will shape the recovery, and the potential that India has in playing a pivotal role in the future innovations of this century. Now, when we talk about India's contribution to science and technology, there is a certain curiosity and intrigue that one can't ignore about Indian mythology and some of the inferences to technology in the world that we live in today. Take, for example, the Pushpak Viman, a reference popular in Ramayana when Ravan abducted Sita, also in Mahabharata when Arjun journeys to the Himalayas. While some say it was a flying chariot pulled by horses, other versions liken it to a horseless chariot zooming in the sky, much like a helicopter. Or the story about the birth of Kauravas, how Gandhari, who was promised 100 children, could not go into labor after conceiving, and in frustration beat her womb till it delivered a massive ball of flesh. Distraught, she sought the help of sage Vyas, who cut the ball of flesh into 100 parts and fermented them in jars. Thus were born the Kauravas. This method can also be compared to a test tube baby or IVF as we call it today. Ram Setu is another great example of how Nal and Neel, two Warner architects, built an engineering masterpiece, a 30-mile bridge from India to Sri Lanka. Interestingly, there is geological evidence of this as well as Valmiki's Ramayana that mentions the concept of civil engineering in building this bridge. According to Indian mythology, when Shiva beheaded Ganesha, unaware that he is Parvati's son, he managed to revive him by placing an elephant's head in his torso. Could be dismissed as folklore, but it brings to light the highest level of organ transplant. And then there is the story about how Valmiki cloned Kush out of a blade of grass when Sita lost love in the forest, which could be inferred as the origin of cloning. And finally, when blind King Dhritarashtra desired to know the outcome of the war, he bestowed Sanjay, his charioteer, with divine vision so that he could narrate it to him in real time, much like the live telecast of modern times. Let's look at some of the inventions that drive our daily lives that you probably didn't know were made by Indians. In addition to the numerical system, the biggest and the most important contribution to the history of mathematics was Aryabhat's invention of zero, without which we wouldn't have a binary system and subsequently no computers. If you ever undergone Ayurvedic therapy, you've got to thank India for it, or more precisely, the father of medicine, Charaka. The first measurement ruler scale made from ivory were in use by the Indus Valley civilization in parts of northwestern India. When we think about ink, many ancient cultures and civilizations independently discovered and prepared ink for writing purposes, but the source of carbon pigment was from India. And board games like chess and snake and ladders were invented in India. Chess originated as Ashtapada during the Gupta period, and Gyandev, a 13th century poet, invented snakes and ladders, which was originally known as Mokshapat. During the British rule, these ancient Indian games made their way to England and later to the rest of the world. You'll be surprised to learn that buttons also came from India. The origins of buttons trace back to the Indus Valley civilization some 5,000 years ago. Back then, they were made out of seashells. And Shushruta, the Indian physician, had the knowledge of performing cataract surgery. His contributions to medicine and surgery preceded similar discoveries in the Western world. Ancient Indians were also pioneers in metallurgy. High-quality steel was produced almost 2,000 years before it was understood by the West. You have to thank India for shampoo, yes, which derives its name from the Hindi word champi, invented in 1762 in the eastern parts of the Mughal Empire. While historians credit Marconi with inventing the wireless radio communication, Jagdish Chandra Bose was actually the first person who demonstrated the use of radio waves back in 1895, exactly 2 years before Marconi gave a similar demo in England. Finally, one of India's most notable contributions to modern space exploration was her instrumental role in discovering water on the moon. ISRO's Moon Impact Probe, which was on board the Chandrayaan-1, first detected the presence of lunar water 3 months before NASA's Moon Mineralogy Mapper made the same breakthrough, which often gets attributed with the discovery of lunar water. India has a rich history of geniuses and scientists that created history by changing the world and setting benchmark of innovation. Take, for example, S. Ramanujan, an Indian mathematician and an autodidact genius who made extraordinary contributions to the mathematical analysis. Satyendra Bose, most remembered for his collaboration with Einstein to develop Bose-Einstein statistic, and has a class of particles called bosons named after him. C.V. Raman won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1930 for his pioneering work on scattering of light, also known as Raman effect. And S. Chandrasekhar, his nephew, was awarded the 1983 Nobel Prize for Physics for his mathematical theory of black holes. Homi Bhabha played an important role in the quantum theory and is acknowledged as the father of the Indian nuclear program. Hargobind Khorana did pioneering work in the area of DNA and RNA and won the 1968 Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine. Vikram Sarabhai was instrumental in setting up ISRO and is known as the father of the Indian space program. And finally, Abdul Kalam, our beloved late president, an Indian scientist and aerospace engineer with DRDO and ISRO, was project director of India's first indigenous satellite launch vehicle. India's association with Nobel Prize goes far back to Rabindranath Tagore, who was the first Indian to win it in 1913. Ever since, 9 other laureates, including 7 in the field of science and technology, have made India proud. While science and technology remains a male-dominated field like much of the world, women like Tessie Thomas, Ritu Karidal, and Mangala Mani have broadened the horizons of science and made remarkable contributions in their field. Tessie Thomas, known as the Missile Woman of India, led the Agni 4 missile at DRDO. Ritu Karidal, dubbed as the Rocket Woman of India, led the Mars orbiter mission Mangalyaan. M. Vanita, the first woman to lead Chandrayaan-2 independent interplanetary mission at ISRO. Mangala Mani, known as the Polar Woman of ISRO, was the first woman scientist to spend 403 days in the icy landscape of Antarctica. And finally, Kamakshi Shivaramakrishnan's Algo and Chip are on board NASA's farthest space mission New Horizon, which is probing Pluto. Now, a number of Indian technologists have played a central role in today's technology that have transformed our world. Take a simple device like USB, for example. It is as relevant today as it is first appeared in the late 1990s, providing users with a discrete and straightforward way of transferring data. Today, more than 40 billion USB devices are in use around the world, a statistic that has secured its co-inventor, Ajay Bhatt, a permanent place in computing's unofficial Hall of Fame. Ajay, who has 132 patents in his name, was famously celebrated in a 2009 ad campaign by Intel, where an actor portraying him strutted into a lab full of starstruck coworkers. Let's take a look.
We are Intel.
Several other tech transformations that touch our daily lives were greatly influenced by Indian pioneers and tech entrepreneurs that complete the India Tech Hall of Fame. Take Vinod Dham, acclaimed worldwide as the father of Pentium for leading one of the industry's most successful brands from inception to its worldwide success. Vinod Khosla was one of the co-founders of Sun Microsystems, which contributed significantly to the evolution of several key computing technologies, including Java, Unix, and virtualized computing. Sundar Pichai, who led the development of the Chrome browser, Chrome OS, Google Drive, Gmail, as well as Google Maps, tools that we all use on a daily basis. He continues to influence tech with his leadership role at Alphabet. Shantanu Narayan, who co-founded a digital photo sharing company before joining Apple, Silicon Graphics, and subsequently Adobe, where he's a CEO since 2007. He was appointed by President Obama to implement technology best practices within the federal government. Satya Nadella, co-inventor on 54 patents, played a key role in their cloud and enterprise computing and augmented reality technologies. Sabir Bhatia, who co-founded Hotmail in '96, which is around when email technology started to get momentum. Arvind Krishna led the building and expansion of new markets for IBM in artificial intelligence, cloud, quantum computing, as well as blockchain. And Narayan Murthy, who conceptualized, articulated, and implemented the global delivery model, which really became the backbone of the Indian software industry and the origin of Infosys. To wrap up, India has played a major role in today's science and technology, and these will continue to be the foundation for the next phase of tech evolution. Some of the future trends have been kickstarted by COVID, where Indians will continue to play a pivotal role. Technology is enabling our fight against the pandemic today, but the effects of COVID-19 on technology innovation have reached a tipping point, and the transformation is only going to accelerate going forward. Some of the structural shifts in consumption and working have only been accelerated, and this could pull forward commercialization of moonshot technologies such as autonomous vehicles, quantum computing, and vertical farming. Earlier today, 15-year-old Gitanjali Rao was selected from a field of more than 5,000 nominees as Time's first ever Kid of the Year. Her work using technology to tackle issues ranging from contaminated drinking water to opioid addiction and cyberbullying is another testament to the potential that India brings to the future of science and technology. Whether it's figuring out how to visit the temple without worrying someone will steal your footwear, to a gully cricket scene that has video referrals using a mobile phone, or the day clay refrigerators become mainstream. Clay refrigerator developed by Mansukh Prajapati, a clever clay craftsman, runs without electricity and keep perishables 8 degrees cooler than room temperature. His idea sold more than 20,000 units and is now a brand called Mitti Cool. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. And when we talk about innovation, it's impossible not to think about the Indian jugaad mindset, a flexible and frugal approach to problem solving. I'd like to close with a video that describes this best. Have a look.
हाँ चलता हूँ सुख बांट बांट हाँ चलता हूँ सुख बांट तेरे जग में लब भर दूं टूटे दिल को कर दूं फिट फ्लॉप फिल्म को कर दूं हिट मैं जगन को मगन कर दूं गिरे को उठा दूं उठे को सुला दूं हाँ मेरा नाम है जुगाड़ हाँ मेरा नाम है जुगाड़ हाँ मेरा नाम है जुगाड़
क्या हुआ? देखो
ये सब जुगाड़ मेरे घर पे मत दिखाना, नहीं तो किसी और को लाके बिठा लूंगी।
So we have some interesting topics later on today and tomorrow, including on quantum computing, agri-tech, and robotics that I hope you all will find engaging and interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation attention, and look forward to a good convention that all of you may have.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Desai. That was quite a revelation. I was actually getting a lot of goosebumps while I was listening to all those stories, and I felt so Indian with me. And it's so beautiful that Gitanjali Rao, it's such a young kid who's setting some really cool strides in the field of technology and engineering. That's amazing as well. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate both of you. I'd like to do a quick call out for the sponsor for the convention. It's C4D Mortgage, based out of Troy, Michigan, and you can visit them on c4dmortgage.com. And for all ASEI related information, please go ahead and visit and click on those links, aseiusa.org. All right, we will be moving on to our next session, which is almost every electronic device we use today is an example of quantum physics in action. We're on the brink, maybe, or we might be on the brink of the second quantum revolution as we attempt to harness even more of the power of the quantum world. Studies have predicted a multi-billion-dollar industry by 2030. So before we hear some exciting nuggets from Dr. Robert Suter, VP Quantum Computing, IBM Research, let's welcome the very energetic Piyush Malik, ASEI President of the Silicon Valley chapter, and also the National Convention Content Chair. On to you, Piyush.
Thank you, Anu. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce the next speaker. Quantum computing is a new form of computing which aims to solve complex problems that even the most powerful supercomputers can't solve. But to talk about quantum computing, who else better than Dr. Bob Suter? He is the Vice President for IBM Q Strategy and Ecosystem at IBM Research. And while based at IBM Research headquarters in Yorktown, New York, he has been traveling the world around talking about quantum. But of course, today he's with us in this COVID times via this virtual means. He had worked in a lot of new and emerging technologies prior to this quantum role, whether it is blockchain or AI or corporate strategies on open source standards. And he also held product management roles for IBM Websphere software on Linux. Now, generally speaking, if ever there was a new and positively disruptive software technology being brought to the market, Dr. Suter frequently had a business position within that effort. Mm-hmm. Now, he's been with IBM for 35 years, more than 20 of them in IBM Research. And he has, Dr. Suter has an undergraduate degree from Harvard and a PhD from Princeton, both in mathematics. With that, welcome, Dr. Bob Suter. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. All right. So I'm going to be speaking about quantum computing, and the part of my title, Dancing with Qubits, should become clear at the very end of my talk here. I'm going to give a slightly technical talk. I mean, that is, I'm not going to go down to the quantum mechanics of what we do here, but I'm going to address this, of course, very specifically to engineers and what we are trying to do here. And I'm going to start with a very basic idea here, and a simple problem. And you know, we've heard about supercomputers. We hear about advances in computing, and they've been absolutely amazing over the last several decades. But when it comes to chemistry, right? If our computers are in fact so wonderful, so powerful, and if we really have a hope of doing a lot of very interesting things in terms of molecular reactions, coming up with new vaccines, antibiotics, and things like this, we're going to have to get to the point where we can exactly model molecules inside a computer. So not approximately. We've been able to do various types of approximate chemistry in computers for quite some time now. but our estimates are frequently way off, and even for extremely small and extremely simple molecules. So this is caffeine that I show you on the screen here. It's a small molecule, right? It's or maybe a small medium-sized molecule. It is impossible to perfectly represent even the electronic structure of caffeine inside a classical computer. A classical computer, these are the ones that go back way back to the von Neumann machine starting in the 40s. Your laptop, the supercomputers, your phones, and things like this are classical computers. Yet we could represent all the information about this particular molecule in what we call in 160, what we call quantum bits or qubits. And the number of bits we would need classically to represent all that information is on the order of 10 to the 48th. So think of that, 10 to the 48th zeros and ones. I'll let you divide by 8 to come up with bytes. To represent the information of caffeine state at one molecule at any given instant. Now, scientists estimate that the number of atoms in the Earth are between 10 to the 49th and 10 to the 50th. So in the worst case, for one caffeine molecule, you would need 1 bit for each atom in 10% of the planet. Well, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen classically. But as I said, when we get to the point of having logical qubits, we could, with fault tolerance, we could represent that with 160 of them. Now, quantum computing is not just slightly different from classical computing. We've all seen disruptive technologies come along. We've seen evolutions of different types of programming models. Yes, we've seen new hardware, but it's a completely different programming model. It's based on quantum mechanics. And sometimes, I like to say, imagine if aliens came down to our planet and they said, we have a completely different way of thinking about computing. At the very lowest level, at the machine level, what we might think of the assembly language level, at the programming language level, for applications, completely different. Here it is, good luck, figure out what it's good for. Quantum computing is not a replacement for classical computing. In fact, I define a quantum computing system to be quantum computers plus classical systems. Don't call them hybrid, because it's the only way you have to do it. They are, a quantum computer is combined into both of these. So they represent a fundamental change, and there are several problem areas where we believe we will be able to make progress. That is, we will be able to take problems that are intractable today. Now, that doesn't mean impossible. It just means we can't do it today, and we'll be able to make progress in those areas. So let me give you a few examples, and these are all from chemistry. We use a tremendous amount of energy around the world in producing fertilizer. 3 to 5%, I believe, is the estimate of the amount of energy we use just for fertilizer. Can we do this more efficiently? Catalysts, such as those we use in the chemistry industry as well as petroleum. Can we be more efficient with these? Can we use, again, less energy, but do things in a more sustainable way? Can we create new lithium batteries, not just for cars, but eventually electric aircraft as well? If we can model perfectly the chemical reactions in a lithium battery inside a computer, we can avoid a lot of very messy, sometimes dangerous, and certainly time-consuming in-lab experimentation and discovery. And then, of course, the question that everyone asks, especially in this age of COVID, when can quantum computing help with pharmaceuticals? I want to be very clear. Quantum computers today cannot do anything to help with COVID. It will be many, many years before quantum computers, in fact, are big enough, powerful enough to do things with molecules of the size of antibiotics or proteins or things like that. There are 3 main areas. So here, from an engineering perspective, if you want to think about, oh, there's a problem, maybe quantum computing might be useful for this. First area is quantum simulations. This is apples to apples. So since quantum computing is based on quantum mechanics, and our universe, at least in the small, atoms, electrons, photons, things like this, are also based on quantum mechanics, we have a very good match. So can we model or simulate physical processes? Quantum computers, it turns out, when you get underneath and you get to the mathematics, there's a lot of linear algebra. In fact, what we work in are complex multidimensional vector spaces. So quantum computers, in fact, are very good linear algebra machines, even better, in fact, than GPUs. So all those places where linear algebra is used, and many different parts of AI, but also areas like computational fluid dynamics, we may be able to get improvements either by doing the math we do better, right? The math we do now, but do it better, or using some of the properties of quantum computing, such as entanglement, which has no classical counterpart, to give us new insights into what we're doing. Now, quantum computing is fundamentally probabilistic. And so therefore, certain types of algorithms, this can be combinatorics, it can be stochastic optimization, are also areas where we think that quantum will be useful. In short, if someone tells you they have a problem and they think that they may be able to apply quantum computing, if it doesn't fall into one of these areas, I'm sorry, the answer is no. Now, we're aiming at quantum advantage. Quantum advantage is the point where quantum computers will be significantly better than classical systems alone. We are not at that point. We will not get to this point for several more years. We don't know exactly. We are building larger and larger machines, but there is no quantum computer in the world today that can do things better, more efficiently than what we can otherwise do with classical methods. And the problems must be important use cases for society or industry. So yes, we are all doing fascinating things in the laboratory, but until we apply them to real world problems, it's just really academic. So I want to give you a little bit of an idea of where we are, because sometimes if you're not doing quantum computing, you may not be aware how far down this road we are. Well, first of all, from the theory perspective, we're 50 years in, right? We've taken 50 years to be an overnight success. But IBM put our first quantum computer on the cloud in 2016. We have roughly 20 computers there. People have run over 580 billion hardware quantum circuits on these computers. So I want to say something very clearly, because there's lots of words out there that have quantum in them, phrases. It's a great marketing term, but this is my statement. If you are not using a Turing-complete quantum computer, real hardware, you are not doing quantum computing. Just as if I am sitting in my living room playing Flight Simulator on an Xbox, I am not flying an airplane. This is an important distinction. So as engineers, please, please, please distinguish between the hype and the overuse of the word quantum and where we are really going with quantum computing. Now, this is a hardware roadmap that we published a few weeks ago. We are on the left-hand side. Our largest quantum computer is 65 qubits. We highlight the 27 because it represents several other technological improvements. And we have published a roadmap that over the next 3 years, we will go, first of all, above 100, and then by 2023, over 1,000 qubits. In the long run, we are going to need thousands and thousands and millions of qubits. So if you look at the work that is being done with quantum computers, this point right here of going over 100 qubits is significant and often not discussed by people. Everybody, no matter how you build qubits, and they're ion trap, they're photonic, they're different approaches, getting above 100 qubits is a real significant problem. We believe, and this is why we highlight the 27 and 65, we have now solved these problems, and we will be able to be jumping up and higher as we go. So 275,000 people have logged on and used was the IBM Quantum Experience. In 5 minutes, you can go to the IBM Quantum Experience and at no charge to you, be using actual IBM quantum computers. What is stopping you? We have made this as friction-free as possible. You can go online. We have drag and drop environments. You can code with Python in Jupyter notebooks, and you can use QuizKit. QuizKit is an open source quantum development platform that we started but has had many, many commits. It is by far, by several orders of magnitude, the most successful quantum programming environment. And if you know Python, you can get up and running right away. You don't need a special different type of language. So once again, you can get in there and use it. Many people have. This is the IBM Q network. Many companies around the world, many universities around the world. And in fact, I want to highlight that we did a quantum challenge in India last month, and we had hundreds and hundreds of students who took part in this. The interest in India in quantum is extremely broad, and everything I have told you about open source, free access to real machines is driving much increased usage and knowledge and hands-on knowledge of doing quantum computers. So really to finish up here, we have to get to quantum advantage. We can't do it alone. There's a tremendous amount of engineering. To get to 1,000 qubits, we have to do miniaturization. We're doing this at close to absolute zero. We're going to go from quantum chips to quantum motherboards to stacked quantum motherboards. I want to highlight and I want to thank our CEO, Arvind Krishna. Arvind, in one of his many roles right before he became the CEO this last April, was the head of IBM Research, and he has been driving the quantum program for several years. Now, just to conclude with the title, just about a year ago, Pact published my book, Dancing with Qubits. This is not a programming book, but this is an approach to starting with the mathematics you already know, or maybe some you don't quite remember, and to take you at an easy pace from all of this different mathematics to understanding the mathematics and the fundamental notions of quantum computing. When you finish reading this book, you should be able to pick up and start reading many more advanced topics, either on hardware or many of the research articles, such as in machine learning and other applications of quantum. So thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you today.
Thank you, Bob. This is wonderful. I'm so thrilled to see that IBM has come a long way since I left 4 years ago, and quantum is definitely some place that is not in too distant future, but with the investments coming from a number of other companies in this field, I'm sure you have a way to get even the youngsters inspired. And I hope our audience got a lot out of this. So I posted some links to your book there. Bob, thank you very much for talking today. And back to you, Anu.
Thank you, Dr. Suter, for your honorable work. Very, very informative, and sincerely appreciate you. Well, as we move on to the next session, it's going to be very interesting because the need to develop rural communities in terms of productivity and convenience so as to curb urban migration and making the villages self-sufficient has received much attention in the last decade. So let's shift our lens a little bit to agri-tech and allow me to welcome, I have nicknamed her, it rhymes with her name, Smart Brain Mamta Narain, the CEO and founder of RealWorldAI.co, a Silicon Valley startup. So Mamta will be your host for the next session with a very experienced Professor Solomon Darwin of UC Berkeley, has Center for Corporate Innovation and Executive Director of Center for Growth Markets. It's all yours, Mamta.
Thank you, Anu and Dr. Suter. That was amazing listening to you. So our next session is going to be on agri-tech innovations for smarter villages. It is about making our villages smarter around the world, is core to the future growth, sustainability, and even for climate change. We have Professor Solomon Darwin from UC Berkeley to share his thoughts on the same. A little bit about Professor Solomon. So Professor Solomon Darwin is a director at the UC Berkeley Haas Center for Corporate Innovation and executive director at Center for Growth Markets. And he is widely known as the father of the Smart Village movement. Professor Darwin has broad leadership experience in corporate management and academia. He's actually an international speaker recognized by peers, executives, and students with numerous awards for his innovative leadership and passion for teaching. He's actually inspired a lot of students through his courses for open innovation, business models, and smart cities, and also courses on scalable smart villages for emerging economies, something that the world needs a lot. As an expert in open innovation and open business models, he's an advisor to senior executives of multinationals and government leaders in emerging world. In fact, his current project on building scalable smart villages was commissioned by the government of India. We are delighted to have him with us today and to share his views on agri-tech innovation for the smarter village. So, Professor Solomon, we are privileged to have you with us today. All yours now.
Thank you, Mamta. Can you folks hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, very well.
Good. All right. It's great to be here today, and great to hear the previous speaker, Robert from IBM. I worked with IBM. I taught the first Watson courses at Berkeley, and also first Smart Cities courses with Berkeley with IBM support. So glad to see IBM on your agenda. But thank you for this morning. I know we are running a little bit late, and this is my topic, agri-tech innovations for smarter villages. We take a different look at how we look at villages in India, and we define smart villages differently. And we also believe that technology is useless unless it has a business model to deliver the value, and it has to be affordable, scalable, and sustainable. Otherwise, technology, we have so much technology, both here and around the world, but it's totally useless to us. So we take a different business model approach. And I just want to quickly go over some of these things. What is a smart village? How do we define it? There are 100 definitions of what a smart village is. We define it differently at the Center for Growth Markets at UC Berkeley. And what are the villages' pain points? And I want to just talk, how do we determine those from grassroots, scientifically, as a research institution, and also our approach to smart villages. And I will discuss a few technologies, especially in the agricultural area, as to what we're doing with those. So the reason that the Center for Growth Markets is focused on this is because we have global problems, mainly poverty, and that's why we got into this. And this new center was established by our dean, who also worked in India with the World Bank, Dean Ann Harrison. And so they also made me the director for this center. And we have 6 billion people, and most of these people, 3.4 billion people, have a hard time meeting daily needs. And most of these people are in villages and rural areas, 650,000 villages in India and 1 million villages in China. And inequity is a problem, the gap between the rich and the poor. And urbanization is another problem that contributes to this. And that is why our focus is on rural places. That's where 70% of our people live. So a professor who works with me at Berkeley publishes this chart, and he simply says that the gap between the rich and the poor is big. The richest 0.1% take away as much as 188 times more than the bottom 90%. Not only the gap is big, but it is also wide. You can see in 1960s, the gap was much smaller, but now the gap is big and it is growing and is widening, and that's not good news. And also the wages, even though we are doing a great job in growing our economies, the wages, the gap between is not keeping up with how we're doing. It's worsening. And this is just global phenomena, not just an Indian phenomena, but it's global. And even in Europe, the gap is big. It's growing. And in India, you have 9 richest people in India own more than 50% of the bottom, more than 50% of the India's population, but that's not good. 9 people own more wealth than 600 million people combined. That's not good. 1% of India's population owns 75% of its wealth. That's also not good. This is the reason why our reason for getting into rural India and smart villages and create that movement. If you look at this chart, we always focus on number one. Number one simply says you're a rich man, and we really create technologies that are useless to most of the people in the world, but we create technologies that have high margins, and that's the 1.5 billion rich people. It's easy to do. It doesn't take a whole lot of innovation. But number two is also easy because we give the crumbs of the table to the poor, all the junk. But number three is hard, and that's where we are focused in at the Center for Growth Markets at Berkeley. There are 5.5 billion poor people, most of them in rural areas, and they are growing at a higher pace, 7.5% every year, versus the rich man is growing at only 2.5%. So we are focusing on number three, and that's where technology really helps. But again, as I said, technology is totally useless to us unless it creates value and is scalable and sustainable. This is a simple definition of what a smart village is. We don't build infrastructure. We don't build roads and water tanks or bathrooms. We build people. So in terms of building people, it is almost giving them access and equipping them. So our definition is a community empowered by technologies, digital technologies that are affordable and scalable, and open innovation platforms to access global markets. So people in India, in rural India, do not need PhDs. They don't need a high level of education. All they need is access, information, tools, and resources, because the human DNA is very smart, and it can survive, and it can excel. It can rise to the occasion. It's very aspirational. It's better than a PhD. We just deprive people because we don't give them access and resources and tools and information. And if we make that available, I think people will do a great job. So this is how we define what a village is. It's a community. It's people who coexist with a purpose and meaning, an ecosystem, relationships that meet one another's needs. If you go to any Indian villages, you see this actually. It's a brand. It's identity, legacy, lineage, ancestral pride, and inheritance. And I come from a village of weavers, and it's beautiful. It's a 3,000 years old profession that is just dying, but it's a piece of art, right? And so it's a brand. My village is known for something. The other thing I want to say to you is a smart village is a business model. It can create value for the rest of the world, but it can also capture some of that value in terms of money so that it can survive and excel and grow. And we need to have a different view of a village. It is a business model. It can create value and also capture value. I also say that a smart village is a platform. It can access global markets to trade without barriers, without any frictions. So I wrote a book, and you may want to get this if you're interested in this and dig this stuff. It's called How to Create Smart Villages, along with our famous professor there, Henry Chesborough, the father of open innovation. And I just want to put this out there for you if you're really very much interested in. And we take what we call an ecosystem approach, which I'm going to describe to you very briefly. An ecosystem is something that's purpose-driven. Okay, your human body is an ecosystem where all organs in your body work together in cooperation and coordination. It adapts in order to survive, and it uses the resources very efficiently, and it recycles waste, and constantly it evolves to thrive. And the new information and new knowledge is being created all the time to make it far more efficient. And it's also interdependent on other organs within the body as a human body. So it needs to be interdependent and not say I can do everything on my own. So our network includes, we work with universities around the world. So knowledge has to flow. And we also work with governments. If the government doesn't work with us, we don't work with the, we have an MOU with Indian governments, different states. Otherwise, it's a futile exercise without that their support. And we also work with businesses. So this is when Bill Gates came to India. Bill Gates came to India, I think about 2 years ago to Visakhapatnam, and he was concerned about why the farmers are dying in our agricultural economy. And we did a study as to why they're dying. And they're dying because of those 12 reasons I list here. Is because when companies come and try to sell to the farmer, they only care about themselves. They don't work together. They comes a debtor to the pesticide company, the fertilizer company, and the government, the landlords. And so those are the 12 reasons that I have given here as to why the farmers are dying. We presented the report to him as to these are some of the reasons. And we surveyed about 10,000 farmers in Andhra. So we did another study where we worked with all the companies and said, how do you like to work together as an ecosystem rather than to work independently and create all those 12 problems on the previous slide that I mentioned, right? And so, they said they would. And this approach is what we're experimenting with in India, where all these companies, instead of working separately, they work together. The good thing about an ecosystem approach is, number one, I write down the benefits of our ecosystem here. Costs are eliminated. Cost elimination is different than cost displacement. We are not moving costs from here to there and to hide them, but actually they're completely out of the system. So the end user gets the benefit of that. Time efficient, speed to market. Risk is shared not just by the farmer, so he dies, but it's shared among all the ecosystem.
Yep, already.
And also yield improved because he's more educated. Everyone wants to farm. So there's a better. I guess we got to some disturbance there. Or is it just me? Okay, all right, very good.
Sorry.
Is it fine? Am I okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, wonderful. So in the crop cycle, people different companies come and contribute different things and different technologies and different ways they can collaborate together. And also this creates data richness. So we understand the pain points of the farmer in real time. And so that is very, very important. So we believe in creating technologies in smart villages, not in isolation, but with what we call the triple helix model that was here, that was a lot of work was done on this at Stanford in the Bay Area. It's called the Silicon Valley model, where the government really plays an important role, which is to help support knowledge creation with universities, and the new knowledge creates new businesses, and the businesses create jobs, and the government gets paid back. It's a return on investment. But in order for that to be true, which happened here in the US during war times, all the knowledge that was created by Stanford and Berkeley and MIT was later, when the war was over, those knowledge was created into what we call consumer products. So this is our ecosystem in smart villages. You can see all those companies that signed up. I was able to bring all these people together to the same table because we are UC Berkeley and we are an agnostic organization, a research organization. We don't have incentivized by profit or anything. So an ecosystem, you see how everything is connected there. In order for them to be connected, you need something in the center. You need energy and communication. Without that, you cannot have a smart village. So we are working with Geo, Reliance, and Tata Power, and Enel, and all those energy companies, as well as the communication companies. Once you have that in the middle, then farming people can get connected to the rest of the world. They come online. And then same thing with healthcare and education. So our kids can learn on their own. They don't need to go to a school that the teacher doesn't show up in villages. So these are some of the things that we're doing, but they're all interdependent and connected, and they all have signed up to work together. It's called a holistic ecosystem, and UC Berkeley is running this. And so we never thought that this will happen, but it is happening, and COVID is helping us accelerate that forward. So a village ecosystem doesn't work unless a company or a technology company is not a part of someone's journey. So I just will show you very quickly what a journey map looks like and how companies work together in collaboration and cooperation. And this is not to explain each slide, but just to show you what that means. For example, we have students, that's the future talent of the world. India houses, 600 million young people who are very aspirational, who can contribute to this world. But we are not giving them access through digital means so they can self-learn, educate themselves, form their own groups, form their own mentors, and put out these ideas. So we are helping that happen with very large companies at no cost to them. And they're certified and they get job placement. Same thing with healthcare. It's the journey of a patient, journey of a farmer, which is the topic that we're talking today, and a journey of a household. And so you need to have what we call be a part of a journey. So for each one of those hexagons, I also created here, the student is in the center, and the students need access to education all the way to number 6, which is job placement. That's why his interest is. He's not interested in a partial solution. He's interested in the total solution. So we do a journey map like this. This is one example. We do one for the farmer, one for the patient, one for the household, one for the entrepreneurs. You can see how in a student's journey, the students, from the time he's born, he needs access to education, basic skills, creative skills, higher education, and all those companies that you see here have signed up to be a part of a student's journey at no cost to them. These are digital tools that all you need to do is give a student, connect them to the world, and they will access knowledge through this. So it's a parallel to our Indian educational system that's very antiquated, like in the United States. And we need to learn faster. So we just need to learn how to deliver talent at speeds that are unimaginable. Here's the healthcare. Same thing, patient's journey. All these companies signed up to be a part, from all the way from preventive healthcare to recovery, right? And here's agriculture. And from education, the farmer needs to be educated, and he needs to have information. And so there's a pre-harvest technologies, growth and maintenance technologies, and post-harvest. So this is the farmer's journey. And this is the household. The people living in villages, they need affordable housing, water, energy, connectivity, transportation, and sanitation. So very, very important. So we are working with all these companies in the household journey in rural areas, because that's where most of our people are. And here are some current projects so that I can take some questions from you. And I will just focus on the agri-tech, because that's what I'm called to speak today. And I just want you to know that we experiment on ground. And we have a control group and a treatment group, and then we see the impact before we scale. So one of the things
Professor Darwin, we have I've been asked to pass on. There is 2 minutes wording.
Okay, 2 minutes. I will finish it off in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
And then we can take one question. Thank you.
Yes. One of the major problem in India is waste. And so why? Because we don't have refrigeration. So if you have a drones that are carrying the produce from wherever they are, from Himalayas all the way to the valleys, directly to the ship or directly to the location, then you eliminate the refrigeration problem, and because 70% of the food is wasted. And the drone technology, this is something that we're working with NASA, as well as with another company called Embraer on having cargo drones. The other thing that we're also looking at is in Himalayas and in some of our rich states where there's a lot of rain and mountains where the roads don't work, we're using this ancient technology that we already used to use to bring back. So it's all done by gravity. So you counterbalance with one weight or the other, so it does not need any energy, but you can also ship things up and down, especially agricultural products. Two technologies that I want to show with this water. In water, we are using this company here, and we're experimenting it, and it looks very, very promising to us. And they are headquartered right here in Arizona, but it's a technology that makes water from air. Right, and basically this is it does not need any energy. It just like sugar collects water, it turns air into water, and it is scalable, and it's sustainable, and it's affordable. But if you have places in India where there's no energy, but if you give one of these, and we have places in Arunachal Pradesh where you have a lot of lead in the water, arsenic in the water, and turbidity in the water, all that is eliminated because it just simply takes air and converts it into the moisture from the air and into water at a scale that you can deliver at a price that's less than the bottled water. And also you eliminate bottles and you create health and does not need energy. And the best part of this is the business model. The business model is it does not need CapEx or OpEx, because this company will come and set it up for you, and all the government has to do, the local people, buy a water purchase agreement. So so the business model does work. Okay, this is wonderful, and I will just give you information if some of you engineers want to work with this company. There's a lot of benefits. They're in 42 countries. Very, very scalable solution, and you can contact Manu here, and I've been working with him for a while, and we have a few pilots going for us. The other one, and the last one here, is also a water solution, but this needs solar. But this also offers water at 22 paisa per liter, which is much cheaper, way cheaper. But this also converts air into water, right? And it's a wonderful technology that we're working with. And they put back minerals, just like the other company does, into the water, so you don't have water that is not that's fully vitalized and fortified. And these are some of the 16 benefits of this particular technology. This also does not need CapEx or OpEx. You know, it is just a water for service where any community can sign a power purchase agreement with the government, and they just pay. And it's also 22 paisa, which is less than a cent, which is amazing for pure water. So Maitri is a great company that we're working with, and they are working within the Indian Railway, and it's all systems that are scalable and sustainable and are working. And so you can also connect with these folks in India. And I also wrote some books that you may want to read, because I'm into sustainability of our planet. And I believe that models have to be scalable. This is One Planet. It's forwarded by Ed Catmull, the former president of Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios. And I also read another book, Our First Smart Village in India, on Road to Mori. And you may want to get this one if you're interested in this. And also how human DNA is better than a PhD. Here's a wonderful real case stories about how people who are devoid of education can excel and start global businesses. All right.
That's amazing, Dr.
And I'm so sorry that I had to rush through this thing, but God bless you. And if you have any questions, I can take, and otherwise we will connect offline.
This was amazing, very informative. I just have one quick question for you. So seems like the global wealth and prosperity divide can be solved through smart villages. So where do you see lies the largest challenge for you in rolling out the technology or the solutions to these villages? Just a quick answer.
Yes.
And if
The
you
biggest
can stop
challenge.
sharing, that would be helpful too. Yeah, we can see you then.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Sharing. There we are. All right.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge for us. Recently, I was called into a meeting with Prime Minister Modi with 15 other top scientists in the world there. And one of them who's doing research in this area, and he said, sir, in order for the Indian economy to really become strong and help all the people there, and bring in the global investment in India, there's one thing that you need to do. Pandit Nehru, our first Prime Minister, started IITs, Indian Institute of Technologies. All that knowledge, all those technologies are totally useless and will not help India unless the T, the last word, IIT, the T has to stand for trust. If you don't have trust in the system, you have a hard time attracting talent and growing the enterprises. And if you do that, you can become the first manufacturing hub in the world, and exceed China in this area. But that's what our focus should be. And I think that's one of the things we're doing. Businesses are ready because you can see that I was able to bring so many people to the table and they all want to work together. And these are global companies. And there's no dirt there. But what they want is a process and a system that we establish trust in the system, that everyone prospers, every stakeholder is benefited equally, and there's and that's the biggest challenge for us. Not only in India, but around the world. We're having that problem right here in the United States, but that's one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you. This was very informative, and I would have loved to go on, but everything has to come to an end. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you, Piyush, for getting me on there. And Malik, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Professor Darwin, for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us today on such a fascinating topic. We appreciate your work. Going to the next session, I think user design experience, being in that industry as well, I think is pretty much core to any application design or any platform design. And one of the core failures too comes down to user design experience. If a product fails or drops dead, it's because of the design experience, one of the core failures. So we're going to bring back Mamta, again, CEO, founder, realworldai.co, a Silicon Valley startup. Mamta has AI product management background and is well-versed with user experience design. And joining her are two wonderfully talented women who are doing some cutting-edge work in their respective fields. Surbhi Kaul, GM and head of product, Juniper Networks, and Urmila Kashyap, who's a senior UX designer for VMware. Enjoy, ladies.
Yeah, thank you, Anu. So again, user experience design, something very close to my heart. So you would want to think, what is user experience? And if I may, it is a person's emotions and attitudes about using a particular product. And in today's high-tech world, user experience can drive, make or break a company. So without further ado, I'll let Surbhi Kaul and Urmila Kashyap talk more about user experience design. But before that, I would like to introduce Surbhi and Urmila formally. So Surbhi is a business leader with immense strategy experience in both B2B and B2C companies. She has built and led product and engineering teams at Google, Netflix, Cisco, to name a few. In her current role, she leads Juniper Enterprise Data Center and is a head of product for network virtualization and SDN software products. Surbhi is also a board member for IIT Bay Area organization and former president of IIT Kanpur West Coast Alumni Association. So welcome, Surbhi, to the session. Our next speaker, and the other speaker along with Surbhi, will be Urmila Kashyap. Urmila is a seasoned UX designer focusing on enterprise user experience. She has led UX design for several financial products at Moody's Analytics and currently leads product design for security solutions at VMware Carbon Black. Prior to her design career, like most of us, Urmila was a software engineer, which inspired her to explore the implication of designs on technology users. And in her work, she strives to simplify the complex using design. So welcome, Surabhi and Urmila. You have 20 minutes so that we can spend a couple of minutes doing Q&A. Over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Amta. So nice to meet you all. How are you all doing? I'm so thrilled to be here today and talk about user experience design and design systems with Surabhi. So I'll start sharing my screen. Hope you can all see my screen.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Great. So we've all used products that we love, and we've used products that we do not like. When you think about your favorite product, it has a lot to do with how it makes you feel, how much time it saves you, how much it helps you accomplish something, among many other things. Just think about how effortlessly our kids have mastered Zoom meetings, how easily they're able to FaceTime with grandparents. They're able to naturally talk to Alexa. But on the other hand, we've also experienced some frustrating experiences like unhelpful password instructions. We've seen confusing signs on bathroom doors. We've seen complicated parking signs. There are toggle buttons that confuse us on some of our the applications and products we use, and so on. So what is it that makes something fun, delightful, and easy to use? And what leaves us frustrated and annoyed? The answers lie in years of analyzing and understanding human behavior and applying that to our interactions with technology. And when this is done right, we have good user experience. Design systems are an outcome of these tried and tested interaction patterns to ensure that the products always deliver superior and consistent user experiences to their users. So to dig in a little bit deeper into design systems, probably not the best example just before lunch, but to dig a little bit deeper into design systems, think about the last time you created your own pizza or built your own burrito bowl. Probably been a while since you went to a restaurant, but in this example, the restaurant is the equivalent of a product company. It offers a finite set of options, which taste the same every time. And the chef, who's the equivalent to a developer, puts these options together in various combinations to create your favorite meal. And you go back there because you know what to expect, and you know that that meal, which is the product in our example, does not change. There is consistency and there's comfort in that. So moving on to a more formal definition of design system, design systems have the following properties. They're made of design components that work together to craft exceptional experiences. And this is a system that serves both designers and developers. It's a collection of reusable components, which are guided by very clear standards, and they can be put together to build any number of applications. Design systems help maintain a consistent design language, and this is not only across products, but also amongst teams. They make design scalable and modular, and it also presents an opportunity to make products accessible. And once accessibility is baked into these design components, inclusion becomes an inherent part of your product. And design systems have rules, constraints, and principles, and we'll get into those in a minute. When you look at design systems closely, you'll find a myriad of attributes for each of these design components. Let's take a button, for example. So this is an example from Material, which is Google's design system. So the rules of a component, such as a button, should tell you about its correct usage. So if you're a UX designer, you will be responsible for defining what this component does, when it should be used, how it looks, all its different states, among other rules that you would define for a component. And each design component also has a set of constraints. So for example, this set of constraints around a button are from Clarity, which is VMware's design system. It shows you the wrong ways of using a button. What this means is that if a component is used outside of its limitations, it may result in bad user experience. Finally, components must have guiding principles that enhance the user experience, that add that delight element. So for example, buttons, again from Material, have a specific purpose and must clearly communicate that purpose to the user. In this example, we can see that a button has to meet the criteria of being easily identifiable. That means that you know that it triggers an action. They have to be easily findable in the UI, not hidden amongst other design elements. It has to be clear in purpose. It should reflect what it does. So why do we need design systems? It may seem like creating a design system is a very daunting process, and it definitely cannot be built overnight, but the benefits are manifold. So if you're a user experience designer, design systems create a common design language. It makes it easier to collaborate and increase productivity across teams. And if you use well-researched patterns, interactions, some micro gestures, micro interactions in your products, it builds users' confidence in the products and also helps in creating that delightful element. If you're a product manager, it helps you create seamless and coherent customer journeys. And it also helps you visualize the future of a product through a finite set of design components. And if you're in engineering teams, it helps you reduce, reuse, and recycle. The design systems make it easier for products to scale. Design and develop components once, and then you can use them in various applications. And overall, for any company or organization, it leads to better collaboration across teams. There's a single source of truth, and it also leads to time and cost savings. And ultimately, for users, they have a consistent product experience. It's easy for them to adapt to new features. And then it also helps in building familiarity and trust. So how would one go about creating a design system? There are a few different ways to approach a design system. And remember that it's not, it is a living specimen. It will grow with time. It will constantly evolve. So some of the things that one approach to creating a design system is you start with an assessment of your current product for different interaction patterns. You look at all the different visual elements that your product has or application has, and any accessibility requirements. And this is an auditing process where you just take an inventory of all of your product components. And then you create an inventory of these components that are already being used and that you visualize yourself using in the future based on a roadmap or based on features that are coming up. And then you go through the process of defining some basic components. And the basic components are all the building blocks of the product. Things like buttons, tables, forms. And then we start to define some common interaction patterns. So when we put together some of these basic components, we start to see how some of these patterns would build out. Things like a form, maybe a filtering component. And from these, we start to build out a bit more complex views from those patterns, maybe individual screens. It could be a dashboard, maybe a navigation pattern, modals, some that are more complex and built upon by using these basic components. And from here, we start to look at creating workflows, maybe a sign-up workflow or an export, or if your product does a photo upload, for example, we could use that as an example to build out using these basic components and views. And finally, it's important to have good documentation, which includes implementation guidelines around how these components have to be used. And we saw that in the button example of how it's documented to show when it's used, how it's used, what are some of the properties of a button, and so on. So some implementation guidelines. It could also have code snippets. And most design systems typically have code as well embedded as part of the documentation. And you could include exceptions as to when not to use it or what not to do with that component. There's a series of do's and don'ts associated with each design component. And ultimately, if the product is accessible, you would want to include some accessibility guidelines for each component as well. So these are one approach, but there are many different ways you can build this. In design, it seems design systems definitely seem design heavy, but it's building one requires effective collaboration across different teams. Product managers, user experience design teams, and definitely developers are the main stakeholders in creating a design system. So with that overview on design systems, I'll now hand it over to Surabhi to talk about user experience in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Urmila. I hope you all can hear me. Thank you for having me here. And I'm very excited to share with you some of my experiences building products using the concepts that Urmila has talked about, because design and product go very much hand in hand. So I have spent a lot of time in companies like Google, YouTube, focusing on consumer products, as well as in Cisco and Juniper, working on more enterprise kind of products. And even though the thinking is slightly different in those two set of users, the common thing is that both of these worlds I have seen that are able to build successful products are the ones that have kept the focus on design and user experience. So if I look at a successful company or successful products, I would say that the reason they are successful is because they have UX and UXR teams working side by side product managers. And what I mean by that is when in traditional environments, we used to look at product managers and then, software engineers working together to design and build products. But over time, we have seen an advent of UX teams that work side by side and collaborate. So it's product managers and UX and developers working side by side. And that's what has built, I've seen successful products. Now, one more important thing to call out is that when I look at enterprise products almost like a decade or more ago, they used to be always accompanied with large manuals, right? Because the usability and the discoverability aspects of those products was well hidden within the product. And a user had to go into training, into like reading manuals before they could use it. But with the advent of more consumer-focused products, and I would say that this happened when Apple came along and made technology very easily consumable for end users who were not so technical. So consumers started getting into technology. The mindset that you have to make it really, really easy came up and has been staying there. So here I want to talk a little bit about how we differentiate in how we think of user experience or UX and design in the two market segments of enterprise and consumer. And I'll talk about enterprise first. As I was saying, that there's a lot of focus on the various tasks and bells and whistles that you're building into this product, because when you go and sell this product, you're monetizing on that long list of capabilities and features you have built into the product. So the focus necessarily was not on, ease of use or discoverability. The thought was like, I'll build this really complex and heavy product, and then I'll give the user this manual or train them to be able to use it. So it continued to stay very complex. However, the shift that has happened because of this consumer-focused products like Apple and Facebook is that the thought of building them more in an intuitive fashion has become, top and center for these enterprise companies and products as well. So even though they continue to be complex, they should be very easily discoverable. So what Urmila was talking about, like the buttons and the repeatability, so the user gets very familiar with how you will use this product, that has become very important, right? So along with making it intuitive, the thought is also that these products should enhance the productivity of an organization, because if you're building very heavy products, users are investing and spending a lot of time on these products that they are not able to, if they're not able to grok them, they would waste a lot of time and hence cost a lot of dollars for the company. Now, so that is the mindset that product managers and designers of enterprise products have to think of. In the consumer space, it's slightly different. You are not really selling the product to an end user, and you do not have to have a long list of features and bells and whistles that you have put in. But you are selling the attention of the user. The market is about getting the user on your product or your property and keep them as long as possible so that you can serve ads and monetize. So the monetizing mindset is different, because of which the simplicity becomes even more important. You want to be able to get the user in as easily as possible, through a notification or some reward point, some mechanism that makes them, interested and engaged. So one book I would like to recommend for people who are in the design area or product area of consumer products is this book, Hooked. Let me make sure that, which is by Nir Ayal, and he's a speaker as well. And he talks a lot about how you build designs that are very easy for users to get into and then be able to consume. So that is how I would differentiate the UX design aspects here. So moving on to the next slide. This is something that I think Mamta mentioned is, human emotion. This is the human-centric design, which says that when you design a product or when you think of a product, you put your user at the center. You start with the user in mind who is my user and what is this problem I'm going to solve for them. Once you have that thinking and you start creating your product, your UX design will be very different, because you're thinking of how am I going to get the right thing to the user at the right time. That's what your UX design should be about. So you have to build the discoverability aspect that I was talking about. And I'll give you an example what I mean by that. So I'm right now working in the networking space, right? And discoverability is about a user coming into your product, and immediately based on the time or the specific need of that user, you surface them the right information at the right time. So if a network engineer comes on your portal, they can quickly see what are the faults or anomalies going on in the network without having to drill through many menus, right? That is what the concept of discoverability is. And then the concept of understanding is that you do not want them to invest a lot of time and effort into understanding what your product does. Yes, there will be manuals. Yes, there will be training, but keep it very simple and intuitive that when you land on the product, you're very easily able to complete your user journey and your workflow. So that thinking only happens when you keep your user in mind first and then start the design process, and not, create a beautiful design and then like try to problem. Don't make the solution, find a problem after you have the solution. And then the next aspect that I feel of successful products is the UXR aspect, which is the UX research. And what I mean by that is when I work with UX teams and we have an initial idea of what the design, what the workflow and user journey is going to be like, we have to validate it by going to the users, whether it's consumer or enterprise. You find a set of users that you can do some research to validate your theories. And you observe how the user is using your product. And by that observation, you can figure out, a lot of times you will see people stumbling across, what you're doing, and you don't guide them, you just observe them. You will find out that the errors they're making are not really their mistake. It's the product that has kind of failed them in helping them, go through that journey and discover what they need to discover in the product. So UXR, I feel, is super important in this whole design and development process of a product. I will also give you an example of Norman doors. If we click on that, this is if you Google Norman doors, you'll find this huge topic around a book that is written by, again, another plugin for a book called, The Design of Everyday Things. If you have not read this book and you're interested in design, I would highly recommend this book, which starts with this book was written almost 25 or 3 decades ago, and design, which used to be primarily thought of as a hardware thing, right? When you're designing a car or a microwave, you think, okay, I have to design. But now it has transcended into the software products. And so the designs have to be intuitive. If you look at these doors, the first set of handles says pull. The second set of handles says push. And we all have landed up with doors where you're like pushing or pulling, not knowing what to do. And that is how, that shows that it's not human error that we cannot figure out how to use the door. It's the error of a design. It's the bad design of whoever designed that door, that you have to give, even as a simple thing as a door, you have to give instructions on how to use it. That is not good. A door should be intuitive. We have used doors for centuries now, right? So in closing, what I would say, if we can go into the next slide, is that good designs are actually really, really hard. And when Urmila was talking about, how every button, everything that we have to think through, every widget, every workflow, it's because you want to get to that point where your user thinks that, it's just a normal product. You're not thinking that it's great design because the product did not make you think at all. You just, picked it up and used it. So the example here is like, we use kettles every day of our lives. And we never think, oh, somebody put or thought into, how you would pick it up and pour something out of it. It's only when you encounter a bad design do you see the value of a good design and what it did for you. So a lot of thought goes into building every product and design. So if you just go through your life and you use these products day to day, and it does not make you think that somebody has put some thought into it, that's a great design, because someone did such a fantastic job that you did not even think twice before using it. It's only when you see a kettle like the red one that you realize that, oh my goodness, this is like such a poor design. Who could have done that? So if you're not thinking about a product's design, that means they have done something right and did not make you think about it. So with that, I will close our topic for today and open it for any questions.
Thank you so much, Urmila and Surabhi. This was amazing. So like I said, this is very close to my heart. So I have so many questions, but I will limit it to two, and taking the audience question as well. So first question is, without endorsing any one particular company or anything, which companies do you think are leaders in experience design consistently, not just one shot? And so who are the companies that comes to your mind have done an amazing job in experience design?
So I would say, having spent a decade at Google, I would say I'm slightly biased, but I have seen every day, like UX product management, UX and UXR teams working together side by side is something I have seen done really, really well at Google, right? Consistency is something I would say, since Google is such a large organization, what Urmila was talking about, the consistency of products, that has been a challenge, and it happens in any large organization. If I look at the products that I use, I feel Apple has done a phenomenal job in making the products so easy to use. I remember the days of BlackBerry. BlackBerry used to be the cool toy for kids, and it was all about more widgets, more things. But it's when Apple came along that I feel that tectonic shift happened in how consumers were able to use and get comfortable with technology. As Urmila was saying, our kids are able to use these applications and tools so much easier, than our generation because of that mindset. So I would call out those two companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And, without endorsing Apple or Google, any of those companies, Apple, in my mind, was really the one that brought experience and the importance of experience in the front, and how technology can be consumable if you make the experience easy. So the second question that comes in my mind is, given that you're a leader in AI and ML space, how do you see user experience designs changing? And reading your introduction, you were with the Google Voice, Google Home and all that. So given most of the interactions are going to be delivered using audio and speech, how do you design for them? There's no sitemap. Yeah.
Great question, Mamta. Excellent question. So, so what we call a UI, right? User interface. In the new world, we are focusing a lot on VUI, voice user interface, because like you said, a lot of communication is now happening in audio. So whether you look at Siri or Google Home or Alexa, the thought is that if we want to use, make it even easier, go to that next level of usability, we have to think of how users converse and interact with these products using voice. So you even take away that component of, having to figure out buttons and clicks. You're like, let me just build products that can, in a very natural way, interact with the product, right? So you say, hey, you want to execute, let's say, ordering food, or completing a task on Alexa, setting an alarm, or simple things like that. What we have had to do is do a lot of user research to understand how people converse and talk, and how can I build that into my product. So it's not, you look for keywords and you use a lot of NLP, and voice processing and natural language processing is a huge field that is being worked on in the last few years. And that is how we will get to that next level of building better products.
No, amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks, Surabhi and Urmila, both of you. So many questions comes to my mind, but I think we are up with time. And thank you.
If there are questions on chat, I'll just continue to answer those in chat for people while you move on to the next
that
one.
would be amazing. And my own question would be, what are the innovations for designing for the ADA with so many technologies? So yes, let's continue the Q&A over chat. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, ladies. Appreciate the work you're doing. So shine on. Now, if we don't talk about AI, then living in today's world is such a disgrace, isn't it? That's not what it's not my quote, it's my son, my little one, who told me, we're doing something with AI. And then he kind of says, Mom, if you don't know about AI, then don't even come near me, type of a deal. But jokes apart, your worst nightmare, what could it be? Because lives are so interconnected, data is so interconnected. And I wake up frightened one day that everything inside me and out of me would all be out there, and my mysterious me would be lost. What about the maps, gaming, shopping, chat box, detecting fraud, detecting your face? We are ruled by AI every single waking moment. So I'd like to bring Piyush Malik back, ASEI Silicon Valley chapter president and content chair for this convention. An ex-IBMer, Piyush is now a senior executive at the Silicon Valley AI startup Spring ML. And joining him would be one of the smartest thinkers in the industry, Rama Akiraju, IBM fellow and master inventor.
Thank you, Anu. Now, AI is something that is in the news every day, and a lot of people dream that and wish that AI should not take their jobs away. But AI is there for doing some good as well. But many times we get distracted by the wrong news. There's one topic about AI which I feel that it will become ubiquitous. It will be available not only in our day-to-day lives, but in our commercial lives and industries as well. So as these industries are adopting AI, and I'm helping clients do that, I feel there is still some challenge out there where people have not been able to productionize AI and machine learning easily. And to talk about some best practices and how do you go about it, we'll learn from my former colleague, and a good friend, Rama. Rama, I will introduce you here. Welcome. Rama is an IBM fellow and master inventor, and also a member of the IBM Academy of Technology, where I met her. And she is at the IBM Watson division, leads the AI operations team with a mission to optimize information technology operations management. Prior to her role, Rama also led the AI mission in enabling neural, personalized, and compassionate conversations between computers and human. Now, Rama has been named by Forbes as one of the top 20 women in AI research in May 2017, and has been featured in a team in AI by Fortune magazine in July 2018. Also named top 10 pioneering women in AI and machine learning by Enterprise Management 360 in April 2019. The list of accolades goes on, but I would like to say that Rama is also the recipient of the University of California, Berkeley's Athena Award for Technical and Executive Leadership for 2020. So welcome, Rama, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Piyush. Great to be here. Very interesting and informative set of talks going on here. I really enjoyed the previous two that I was able to catch. Can you see my screen?
Yes, all well.
And hear me okay?
All good.
Okay, all right. If there are any hiccups, just give me a holler. I'll keep going. Once again, pleasure to be here. Thanks, Piyush, for the invitation. Today I will talk about how to make AI work for enterprises. We all know that AI is everywhere in our day-to-day lives. We use it, some consciously, some not so consciously, but we use it in our day-to-day searches, in the way we use maps, the way we use our smartphones for various things, all kinds of interactions that we can have with our Alexas and Google Homes, kind of tools at home, self-driving cars now, Roomba robots, name it. There is so much of AI going on in our day-to-day lives. We're already consuming it. AI is also making its way in a big way in enterprises. And in fact, I would say it has always been there in some shape or form. But now, due to various factors that really brought it to the foray, we're able to leverage and put AI to use to help us unleash a lot of insights from unstructured data that we weren't able to process before. So you can see AI in enterprises all the way from, image recognition, processing invoices, and our billing receipts and optical character recognition, those sort of things that started on early all the way to chatbots that are making their way in customer support more and more. And in healthcare, in a very big way, all the way from pouring over large volumes of medical journals and articles and treatment plans and such, and assisting doctors and nurses in various aspects to robotic assistance in doing surgeries, to you name it, for assistance for radiologists in reading radiological reports and finding anomalies in them and making it easy for them to focus on specific things. Many things in healthcare. And then talk about legal domain, again, pouring over large volumes of laws and prior art, and helping legal assistants and attorneys prepare for their cases. Social media monitoring, where there is a lot of unstructured text, where people are talking about their interests, their likes, dislikes, and such, and from that derive personalized recommendations, advertising and recommendations, and so on. Retail based on purchase patterns, of course, and so on. And even in IT in a big way, be it with operations management, keeping systems up and running, or with decision support in loan approvals and college applications and screening applicants and so on and so forth. So there is a whole slew of scenarios where AI is being applied. I would like to categorize them into the following use cases, broadly speaking. As we look at infusing AI into business processes, we can see that it is typically employed in service of either automating something, optimizing something, or providing decision support, or augmenting human intelligence in some shape or form, personalizing various kinds of engagements, and providing natural interfaces. That is, the previous speakers have spoken about how speech and other kinds of natural language, text and such, and are becoming more and more the user interfaces that we use to interact with, as opposed to the clicks and on web pages and so on. So there is a lot of use cases for which AI is being applied in enterprises, and I've listed some specific analytical capabilities, features that are being applied in service of those. Take classification, regression, causal reasoning, search, insights, discovery, sentiment analysis, and so on, and each of it being applied to the specific use cases that I talked about on the left-hand side. So now what I want to talk about is, what is it that we have to worry about? What are the considerations? What are the factors that one needs to take into account in making this AI work for enterprises? We are already seeing these use cases, and we talked about some of these industries and domains where AI is being applied. So what happens behind the scenes? What are the considerations that companies have to take into account as they experiment with and do proofs of concepts, and as they deploy production-ready AI-infused applications and systems? That's what I want to focus on. And to kind of cut to the chase and give you a summary of it, I argue and I posit that companies have to consider a set of factors such as robustness, accuracy, continuous learning of AI models, transparency, fairness, accountability, explainability, and trust. And these are really the foundational pillars that one has to have and one has to consider in order to deploy AI-infused applications. So now let's step back and look at, okay, so we talked about various industry-specific problems. What are the building blocks that enable AI to come to life? And if you look at, the higher order applications could be that you're using it in healthcare domain. You're using it as doctor's assistant, as legal assistant, as an IT operations management software, helping IT operations folks keeping the systems up and running, as a decision support system in college application screening. We talked about those, but there are a set of foundational components that have to be brought to brought together and have to be there in order to build all those. And those include natural language understanding, which is, for processing large amounts of unstructured text, you need to be able to understand what are the entities, what are the named entity mentions, what are the relationships, concepts, and so on. And if the type of content that you're analyzing happens to be unstructured, but it's visual or auditory, then you have to have speech to text and image recognition and text to speech type of things. If you want to personalize things, you want to be able to understand people at a deeper level. So you need to be able to analyze their text or gestures and images and videos and so on to model their personality traits, their emotions, their sentiments, and their communication tones, and so on. And then, in order to, the next order of things that we need to pull together include having dialogue management. That is, for natural interfaces, you need to know what was spoken, what was said, what is the context, what was the intent, and have the thread of conversation. That's the dialogue management. So these are the foundational AI componentry that's required to build anything that sits on top. So let's keep that aside and say, okay, now let's say we have those foundational components, either to build those foundational components themselves or to build the higher order applications using these foundational components. What is the life cycle of an AI model? There is a lot of detail to this life cycle. I'll mention it at a very high level and say, preparing the data to train AI models is a critical aspect of building any AI model. There is a whole life cycle management to managing that data life cycle itself. It means you're first of all acquiring the data, making sure that it is cleansed properly. If it needs to be labeled, that whether it's a sentiment of a positive sentiment statement, negative sentiment statement, or is this an image of a particular furniture, or is it an image of a rusty bolt, whatever, you have to label it. And there could be unsupervised algorithms that may not require labeling, but for the most part, majority of the machine learning algorithms tend to be supervised, for which labeling is required, which means you have to go through that whole process of preparing the data. Labeling can be done by humans, experts, crowd workers, whatnot. So that whole data management cycle, and there is a lot more to it in terms of making that it's secure, you're acquiring it legally, and it's in the right proportions, and there is enough representation of every label, and so on and so forth. Then there is the feature preparation, that is from all of this data that you have prepared. Now you start to break it down into its component parts, such as whether it's tokens or segments or part of speeches, or phonemes in the case of speech, and so on. And you use those and convert them into some kind of a vector representation that then becomes features into the machine learning models, and you select the right and appropriate machine learning model and architecture, run through various experiments to configure and finalize the parameters that really produce optimal prediction results, whatnot, test the models with a lot of test data sets, and deploy the model. This is the classic life cycle of building an AI model, right? There is so much detail that we can go into each one of these, but I want to get to the higher order set of things. So you build an AI model, let's say you go through that pipeline, you have some kind of a platform, and you build a model. So what do you do next? Are you ready to deploy it? Can you just deploy it in production? What if it starts to make mistakes? Clearly, any AI model is not guaranteed to be 100% accurate all the time. It's learned from patterns, and it may or may not have seen all the patterns. There may be seasonality, there may be long tail type of scenarios that it may not have seen enough instances of during training. It needs to learn from its mistakes. What is that life cycle like? Who needs to manage it? And what if it's exhibiting undesirable bias because of the way the data was constructed, or because of the way the model was prepared? What if it just gives you a prediction but doesn't explain anything about how it got to it? Is that good enough in enterprises? Let's go through some of these aspects, and then I'll point out as I go through this as to why all of these factors have to be taken into account. Not just you get a bunch of data, prepare it, label it, and go ahead and deploy the model in production and hope that everything works fine. No, that's not how it works, right? So I coined a mnemonic to make it easy to remember. I call it raise facts. Your is just a connecting phrase in between. Raise your facts. Each letter stands for a particular attribute of an AI model that we need to care about to make AI work for enterprises. So I won't go through them in sequence. A for accuracy, C for continuous learning, C for consistency, S for security, F for fairness, T for transparency, E for explainability, A for accountability, R for robustness. Put them all together, raise your facts, something easy to remember. Let's go through at least some of these things as time permitting, if not all of them, and see how far, what are the factors, and derive insights based on it. Accuracy, absolutely important. There is no denying it. When you build an AI model, so let's say for customer support, you want it to recognize the intent with which the customer has called and make sure that it is able to respond back with the corresponding response that makes sense to answer your question. You're calling about a problem with your cell phone not charging, you're calling about your particular application not loading, you're calling about a certificate not expiring and you need to get it renewed. It needs to understand that intent. So accuracy, no doubt, is important. And accuracy is measured in many number of ways. Precision, recall, F measure, in the case of speech to text, it's word error rate, sentence error rate, and so on and so forth. However, there is an interesting factor to keep in mind as you try to optimize AI models for accuracy. And that is, you have to have clarity on whether you are building an AI model for what are you trying to solve, which problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to solve the general purpose AI, or are you trying to solve a specific problem? So if I'm deploying a customer support application, specifically, let's say, in a fast food, let's say I'm deploying a voice recognition system wherein it can take orders in a fast food restaurant scenario. Okay, you drive through and you are making an order. It needs to be able to do a damn good job of recognizing the spoken words of the menus, right? Burgers, fries, whatever drinks you have. There is a narrow domain there. And there are lots of parameters that make even recognizing that narrow domain very complex. So for example, orders could be placed by, people in a drive-through car with dogs barking in the background, with children, playing or yelling and shouting in the background. There is radio playing in the background. In all kinds of these noisy environments, it still needs to be able to recognize, or the engine humming needs to be able to recognize, what is the exact order that's being placed. Now, if that is the problem that you want to build a solution for, there is no need for that to be, doing the best it can in healthcare domain, in recognizing different kinds of words from other domains. And so there is no need to solve general purpose AI in that particular, because it's such a hard problem to recognize all accents, in this noise and the backgrounds and all of that. And it just takes too much data and too much work and too costly and too time consuming to solve the general AI. That's the base model that I'm talking about. So you may have to work with a good enough base model, and it's absolutely fine that it doesn't understand everything in the general domain of news and movies and social media and all that. That's fine, as long as it has a broad-based understanding of some phrases and such, and can understand the grammar and such, and that's fine. Then you start to narrow the problem and say, okay, now I'm going to focus on restaurant domain. Even in that, I'm going to specifically focus on fast food ordering, and here is my specific menu options. And therefore, as long as I can do a pretty good job of building a model that recognizes that amid all these other parameters that I talked about, noise and accents and other things, that is the model that really is a practical model that you need. So the key point here is that if you want to solve the general purpose AI, you need a lot more data, which is on the x-axis, in order to get to the levels of precision you need. However, you can ride different learning curves by narrowing the problem, at which point you are able to achieve the same level of precision with smaller amounts of training data. So that's a very key insight that we got early on. And there is no shame in solving a practical problem and a narrow problem instead of trying to solve the whole broad AI. And we see more and more AI solutions that are getting deployed are of this kind. They solve specific problem in specific domain. Okay, let's say you built that, you deployed it, and it's doing It's making its predictions. It's still getting some menu order wrongs in a fast food domain. What do? Well, it needs to get feedback. Somebody has to initially, or somewhere along the way, there has to be enough processes in place where it gets that feedback saying this prediction is right, this prediction is wrong, so that it can take that input and continuously relearn and keep learning. We all who ever learned to ride bikes, we know that we went through a process. We fell several times before we got the hang of it. Really speaking, AI goes through the same process. It needs to take feedback and learn continuously. And here is an AI model continuous improvement life cycle, at least a part of it, a depiction of it. There's too much detail in here. I will just point out at highlights. Here is let's say an AI model. It is taking some input and it's making a prediction. Let's say I'm speaking out a menu order. That is the input, and the prediction is that what I ordered is an order of fries and a burger. Let's say I actually happen to have ordered fries and let's say some noodles. Some, for whatever reason, it made incorrect prediction. So now we got to know whether what the prediction is right or wrong. Initially, an expert could label it saying, hey, this is correct, this is incorrect. Over time, the system can actually build another model that makes a prediction on how likely is this model likely to be correct. And you can start to bucket it into correct and incorrect. And really now you want to focus on the incorrect predictions. Why is it getting wrong? Is it because of the noise? Is it because of the accent? Is it because we didn't train enough phonemes in this particular situation? If it is a speech to text model, I'm just using that as an example. It could be anything, text, it could be visual images and so on. Understand and do a specific error analysis and categorize the errors. In the case of a sentiment example, for example, it may be getting neutral sentiments always mixed up with positive. And if that is the case, you want to really demarcate what is it that that needs to be taught more for the system in that particular case by giving additional example. So you take the data where it's making mistakes and start to improve it, build improve the models, rebuild and go through the life cycle and see if the new model is better than the previous one and redeploy it. So this cycle has to be a continuous cycle. It should, in some cases, it should happen as frequently as every few minutes to every day to every week, depending on the type of model. So there needs to be AI platforms that enable this kind of behind the scenes continuous improvements of these models. Now let's talk about fairness. Let's say that you built a model, you have the continuous improvement cycle going, but the model is exhibiting undesirable biases. How do you know? First of all, if you look at in popular media, there have been actually a lot of articles written recently in the past several years, 3-4 years especially, on how AI models are biased and they're exhibiting undesirable biases on race, gender, and those kind of things. And there was an article in New York Times back in 2018, I believe, on how visual recognition AI models across various vendors that this research team who published a paper on have exhibited bias. They couldn't recognize African women's faces.
I'm sorry, Rema. I'm sorry, Rema, to cut you off, but you're running out of time. So if you could, work on your conclusion, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I have a clock timer going here. Yeah, thanks for the reminder too. Models could be exhibiting a lot of unfair bias. So it could come in from data, poor representation of data, labels. It could come in the way the model is built. So the bottom line for this is, how do you deal with it? You have to, if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you there. As in, if you don't know the purpose of why you're building an AI model, you will build something and put it there and it'll do something, but it's not what you want. So you have to have clarity. You have to create the data sets appropriately to test the models ahead of time. Ensure that the data is representative and has all the labels that for all the test cases that it needs to pass. And once you have that clarity and define those kind of things, you can start to do different simulations beforehand before you deploy and get into these kind of embarrassing situations. I'll just mention a couple of things about transparency and explainability, and the rest of the things we can talk about another time. any AI model that is just completely opaque is an absolute no-no in certain domains. In some cases, it may be okay in a broad-based social media type of analysis, but in certain industries where it's regulated and humans' well-being and personal finances or health is at stake, or mental health is at stake, having opaque models is not acceptable, and it is, in fact, it may not even be agreeable legally. So there has to be explanation of why the model is making, what are the parameters that it's relying on, and how, and be able to explain why it made the predictions. And that is critical, and that actually dictates the choice of algorithms that you have to make. And in some cases, it may not be that critical. So I'll jump to the conclusion here to say, look, I haven't talked yet about consistency, but the bottom line is that the models have to consistently improve as they're continuously improving. If they're going 2 steps forward, 1 step backward, it's no good. If they're not accountable, as in you don't have full lineage and you cannot really show what data the model is trained on, the one that's in production, it's a problem, because there could be audit. Somebody could come and ask for, why did it make it affected the such and such person's mental health? What was the data that you fed in? You have to be able to show it. So that there has to be accountability. And of course, adversarial attacks are very much a possibility. So you better actually prepare the models yourself by creating lots of adversarial examples so that the model itself learns, and you cannot easily tweak and manipulate the system. So to conclude, I would say, if you really want to deploy AI for enterprises, you really have to not just focus on accuracy and building a model, but on all of these other things, such as that it has to be a life cycle for it to continuously learn. It has to be fair, and you have to have the mechanisms to measure its fairness and undesirable biases and be able to mitigate those biases. And there are many tools and platforms, both in the open domain and in the vendor domains for these things. And it has to be transparent. It needs to be able to really explain why it's making the predictions. It needs to be consistently improving, as I said, and it needs to be accountable. You need to be able to provide the full audit of how it got to the predictions, what data it used, and so on, and whether it's legally acquired or not, and all of that. And it needs to be robust and it's secure. So that's it. Those are the factors, and that's what it makes it. That's what it takes to make AI work for enterprises. Let me pause there for any comments, questions at this point.
Thank you, Rama. I would have loved to have a lot of questions on this, but we are running very late here. We're late by 8 minutes overall. So I would just say I do appreciate your presentation here. There are questions about GPT-3 and how AI in healthcare, and a couple of questions on Watson as well. But I would do that in the chat, and please stay on with us while we move on to the next session. So thank you very much, Rama. I'll connect with you offline.
Sure thing. Bye, everybody. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Rama. You got my mind excited with your knowledge. There's so much to learn. Thank you so much for your participation, and I really appreciate your work. Well, we're coming to my long lost industry, AVs, autonomous vehicles, and the future of transportation. I get so excited because of the connected vehicle experience I had in my past life. But as much as you see a lot of people saying bad things about COVID, one of the blessings that COVID has brought with it is a growing enthusiasm and acceptance that AVs are the way of the future. So let's invite our very calm and poised session host, Bhavesh Joshi, ASEI National Vice President and co-chair for this convention. And joining him are some extremely talented individuals, Jeff Hanna, Director, SPD Automotive, and Akshay Desai, Associate Director, McKinsey & Company, who are going to address the need to blend the knowledge gap with the enthusiasm gap. On to you, Bhavesh.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you very much. Can you everybody hear me okay and see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, Bhavesh.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I hope everybody's enjoying all the sessions. We had wonderful speakers so far. Let's get on with this exciting topic. So good afternoon. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Hanna and Akshay Desai to talk about the autonomous vehicles and future of transportation, our favorite topic. Jeff Henna is the director of SBD Automotive. Since 2014, Jeff has guided the North America office of SBD Automotive and has more than 18 years of experience working with global automakers and their partners to successfully plan and implement effective CASE strategies. CASE stands for Connected, Autonomous, Shared, and Electric Vehicle Strategies. So keep the CASE in your mind. SBD provides automotive technology research and consulting services to over 95% of automotive OEMs globally, and majority of leading suppliers and service providers. Prior to this role of SBD Automotive, Jeff was a leading member of General Motors Global Connected Services Organization, GCS, which included the industry's most successful telematics service, OnStar. So welcome, Jeff. Let me also introduce another great speaker here, Akshay Desai. Akshay is an associate partner at McKinsey & Company. Akshay has exclusively worked with clients in automotive, aerospace, and defense industries, focusing on product development and specifically R&D excellence. Since joining McKinsey, Akshay has led multiple large-scale R&D transformations across the automotive sector, from OEMs to Fortune 500 Tier 1 suppliers. And this transformation is focused on boosting engineering efficiency, increasing product quality, improving abilities in rapid new product introduction. And prior to joining the firm, Akshay worked in product development at Boeing Commercial Airplanes, driving development of the then new 787 Dreamliner, and led quality transformation work in investment casting at Arconic. With that, let's just jump right into the presentation. I'll have Jeff take it on. Let me just share. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yep, just put it in presentation mode. There you go. You want to go to the next slide, Bhavesh? Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much to Bhavesh Joshi and the ASEI team for having me as your guest speaker this year. I thought, a lot of you on the call today cover or read about autonomous vehicles, and there's probably more questions than answers. So what I want to do in the next, I think I have about 8 minutes to just get a couple points across, but really proactively get at maybe what's on your mind and provide a few insights today. So why don't we go to the next slide, Bhavesh? Bhavesh did a great job of introducing myself and SBD Automotive. I've got all my contact information at the back. Probably best to just link in with me after today's presentation, and you can learn more about us at sbdautomotive.com. So the next slide, Bhavesh. So about a year back, the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra, said that the automotive and transportation industry would change more in the next 5 years than it has in the last 50. And I'd like to start with this slide just showing kind of where we started in transportation over 100 years ago and where we're going. And really going back to the 70s, cars have become more reliable. We've started to integrate more and more technologies with things like telematics, infotainment, and really the last 5 years have been on how do we share vehicles that sit kind of on their own 92% of the time. And what I'll talk today about is how do we make those vehicles really self-driving and on their own. So let's go to the next slide and get at our first question. So the first question is pretty simple. What is an autonomous car and when will we see them? So in terms of defining autonomy, there's really 5 levels of autonomous cars. So not every vehicle is created equal. And the Society for Automotive Engineers really has defined autonomous cars on really 6 levels, from having no automation to being able to drive itself in all conditions. So really what defines these levels is what is the input as a human driver you're putting into the car? So are you steering the car, just supervising it? Who is in control of the experience, either the vehicle or the driver itself? And when are we going to see those cars in the future? I would say the most difficult level on this whole chart is level 3. And why is that? Because it's really a shared experience. The vehicle is doing some things, the driver is doing some things, and it's very hard to hand things back and forth. So where we're at today as an industry is really at kind of level 2+, meaning the driver can take the hands off the wheel, but they have to be supervising that experience at all times. We'll probably see level 3 in 2021, and then get into levels 4 and 5, where the vehicle is really driving itself significantly in the future, but important to remember, just in a limited area. So next slide. So really what's pushing this drive to autonomy? So on the left, you've got those levels 0 to 2, mostly safety driven. People, of course, want to be safe. A lot of regulation, whether it's the Department of Transportation or things like the Euro NCAP in Europe, really driving the benefits of what we call ADAS technology and making cars much more safe. Levels 3 to 5 are really, how do I get time back as a driver? Many of you have long commutes pre-COVID, where you're spending an hour or 2 hours on your way to work. How can I make that time more productive? And a lot of that's market driven. So if you look at things like Waymo, Tesla, others, they really are targeting that robo-taxi market about allowing people to do secondary things. And a lot of that is still not really regulatory driven, but driven by the free market. So next slide. So what are the challenges? You know, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but all these are business opportunities for everyone on today's call. So first and foremost, the consumer has to accept autonomy. We'll talk about that in the Q&A. And then in terms of the technology working, if you think about something that has to work 99.9999% of the time, so 5 nines of reliability. In terms of ethics, if the autonomous vehicle is working for me and a dog runs in front of my car, do I hit the dog or do I steer off into a tree? And everyone's ethics are a bit different. So how do vehicles, you know, really obey the rules of the road? And do we need an infrastructure? So there's been a lot of talk on things like vehicle to vehicle infrastructure. How do they keep the car safe? And then when something bad happens, who's at fault? So next slide, Bhavesh. So just in terms of sensing the environment, a lot of people take driving for granted because many people are very good at it. But whether it's reflections, foggy days, snow on the road here in Michigan, a police woman or man, hand signals, really, really tough for an automobile to know what to do. If I look at that gentleman there at the top, is he going to stay back or dart out in front of me because he's looking at his phone? All these issues have to be solved to make the autonomous vehicle really safe. Next slide. So number 4, I've talked about that challenge of handing back control, and we're probably going to have this for some time. So one of the issues that Tesla faces, you know, in terms of the car operating is that ideally the person is paying attention at all times. Where a lot of car companies have gotten into trouble is where the car is operating sort of on its own and people are looking at their phone, watching a movie. And if you look at that steps 3 and 4, that takeover request and transition time, there's a lot going on to alert the driver, to make sure that the driver, when they take back control, are aware of their surroundings. And that's very, very complicated overall. So Bhavesh, next slide. So what does the business model look like? So if you look at every CEO in the world, they're talking about moving from being an automaker to being a full mobility provider. So if you look at those levels vertically, car companies want to move from just becoming makers and sellers of cars to providing services. So what I've outlined here on this slide are just the different roles that every car company is deciding to play. For example, BMW is a leading manufacturer. They also have car sharing services. Tesla has openly said they want to provide an Uber-like service. Waymo, which is owned by Google, is really a disruptor, and they're partnering with many names up here to provide the services themselves. So really watch how this ecosystem is going to play out. Next slide. And finally, to stay on track, here's my last question. You know, where is the disruption going to take place? And I think personally, it's going to take place in these mobility as a service. I think many of you with COVID have really experienced getting groceries delivered or getting restaurants. So delivery as a service and all these use cases on the left-hand side of the screen, the biggest expense is the driver, right? So if we can take drivers out of the equation in things like gated communities, hospitals, deliveries as a service, you've got a real business case. On the right, it's just showing what are all the pieces that have to come together to make this work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Bhavesh, and I'd love to hear Akshay's perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Really appreciate all the insights. We'll hold off on the questions after Akshay's presentation here, and also would like to request all the participants to send the questions in chat, and we'll address them as well. Thank you. Go ahead, Akshay.
Perfect. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak here. There's a lot of content on the following pages, so I'll move quickly through to ensure time for Q&A, and happy to answer any questions or follow-ups, you know, here or via LinkedIn, anywhere else as well. So, you know, this page, you know, there's several key projections for AV adoption. And to celebrate, you know, many vehicles, both premium and non-premium, already have, you know, L2 or what we call L2 ADAS technologies, like radar, cruise, and steering assist. Going forward, we do expect some contenders, you know, Tesla is one of these that have high disruption and are, you know, at the same time, we're seeing the opposite, where OEMs, some of them are facing delays in their AV roadmaps or, you know, are moving away from funding certain aspects of their AV roadmaps. So the takeaway is, you know, hey, we could see high disruptors coming in at, you know, L4 highway by the end of 2021, but this is probably a feat that's more achieved, you know, in the 2023, 2024 timescale. Can you move to the next page? So what's driving these scenarios and differences? Why do we have kind of different scenarios that can come from AV adoption? We're really seeing three major factors. One is the regulatory environment, and as we'll see, especially at a local or regional level. Two is the consumer acceptance, and three is the technology timeline, which you know, was highlighted pretty well in the prior presentation, as well as these edge cases, which make it so difficult. The most likely scenario in this kind of matrix that we're seeing here is really a policy-guided shift towards pooled autonomous vehicles and transit. Meaning that while AV adoption takes place, we'll actually see significant changes in the mobility market, almost, you know, synergistically as AV creeps into the fold from a technological perspective. Move to the next page. So here's an example of how regulation will really shift the future mobility market. In the policy-guided shift in the blue, we see that there are several disruptions to PMT or private modes of transportation. And we see regulations potentially disincentivizing personal vehicle use. And this could lead to flatter future vehicle sales, especially for light passenger cars. In fact, a study was conducted across, you know, European architect cities. So we'll take that with a grain of salt, European and how heavily public transport plays a role there. But London, Berlin, Prague, Munich, identifying modal shifts from private vehicles, which is, you know, almost their staple, to a combination of public transport, taxi, rideshare, or even other areas like bicycles or non-vehicle transport by 2030. You can move to the next page. And we'll skip this one if you can move to the one after that. So consumer acceptance is the second major driver. Here we found that the consumer perceived value of autonomous vehicles is correlated with the feasible activities you can do while driving. So on the left side, you see, you know, talking to people, which is easy to do without autonomous vehicles, hopefully for everyone. And then on the right side, you see, you know, reading, working, or even sleeping, which really requires the L4 plus, or maybe even more so capabilities from the vehicle. And so what's interesting is we see that perceived value heavily tied to what the activities could be done when you're in the car. and really not much else. If we look at the second page, or the next one, here these kind of bar charts show willingness to pay across ADAS features. And on the right side, it shows willingness to pay for connectivity features. And two things that are interesting here. One is, you look on the left-hand side in ADAS, and you're not seeing a huge difference. I mean, there's some small variation, but you're not seeing a huge difference in what the customer is willing to pay. And this is really tied to, they don't care so much whether you call it a traffic jam pilot or a highway pilot. They care more about what they can do during that time period. Can they read a newspaper, or do they really have to be paying attention to the outside world? This also could be driven by feature confusion, and I'll get into this on a little bit on the following pages. But one example is even radar cruise control. We're seeing significant variations in capabilities and in the boundary conditions, even in probably what's the most basic feature that's been around for maybe a decade or even more. If you can flip to the next page. Safety is obviously critical, right, to AV adoption. So there's no surprise on the right-hand side. We see these, major areas. The 62 is no surprise that, greater safety is important. What I think is interesting here is the second bar, which is, the OEMs need to give more information on the technology. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. Jeff highlighted this in his presentation, that the handoff of where you have, going from the computer to the human or AV system to the human. But we see several variations in the control limits here. And the example I gave before, radar cruise, Lexus systems often cut out at 25 miles an hour or below. So they're not really going to stop you from having a collision with the vehicle in front of you. Infinity, on the contrast, actually slows you down to 0, but then after 2-3 seconds cuts you out and goes back to idle. So you'll actually creep forward and hit the vehicle in front of you. Tesla is the other example where, it'll actually come to a full stop and won't continue moving forward until the vehicle in front of you clears out. So there's different boundary conditions on this radar-based technology, and that's only going to get more complicated as we have L3, L4, et cetera. You can move to the next page. And I'll say one thing on this: 40% of consumers accept AD today, and younger respondents have a higher acceptance rate. And then we'll move on to the next page. So what does this mean if we take a step back, for the AV market? And here is what the most shocking aspect is we actually see over the next 10 years the AV market being one of the largest revenue pools globally. And you see the blue bar here, over $1 trillion in the global market. So, this is not going to be a small area, and it's going to be an area that's going to be, as Jeff mentioned in the prior, heavily invested, and there's going to be different investment strategies. So if you move to the next page. Breaking down this market, we're seeing major revenue growth segments in both the base vehicle, so where our traditional OEMs, BMW, GM, et cetera, play, as well as basic operations, the traditional rental fleets, but there's a couple other disruptors in that space as well, and mobility platforms. So these are our Ubers or Lyfts, the folks that are making use of rideshare platforms. And when you see this chart, you kind of see, hey, what are the major players that I think of, as folks involved in the space, and you see where they fit in typically these big circles or big revenue areas. They're obviously investing in these areas to capitalize on. You move to the next page. What's interesting is we're seeing different focus areas between the traditional players like OEMs, tier 1 suppliers, and the major tech players like Waymo, Aurora, and others. OEMs are kind of primarily focusing on L2 vehicle applications. Now truck applications are huge, and the progression to L3, et cetera. Tech players are often focusing on the robo-taxi development. And we're seeing this dichotomy come out pretty heavily, and we'll have to see and wait until 2030 or as we go forward to see, which use cases are going to be the most valuable. We can move to the next page. So, stepping back, what are we seeing overall? We're seeing regulations, especially in the regional market, driving and affecting future vehicle sales, as well as L2 features through 2025, as well as, L2 plus beyond. Second, we're seeing regulations intersect heavily with consumer insights. Willingness to pay is driven primarily off what you can do while driving or not driving, quote unquote. And current acceptance stands at around 40%, but this is growing over time with safety considerations. And the market implications are significant, right? The $1 trillion plus market, as well as the large segments in base vehicles and operations and mobility platforms. We are seeing, again, this dichotomy between OEMs and tech players. And we'll have to wait and see in the next few years on where this plays out and whether robotaxis, as Jeff mentioned with COVID, will take on more heavily versus the more traditional model of private vehicle use.
Awesome.
Thanks so much again for your time. I'll hand it back to Bhavesh for any questions or Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Jeff. Let's, in interest of time, field some questions here. So very interesting topic. Question to you, Jeff, and please, Akshay, feel free to add on. How do consumers feel about autonomous cars? Is there a business case here?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a business case, and Akshay did a nice job of presenting some data, which is consistent with our data at SBD Automotive. What we've noticed is really there are three factors in terms of acceptance. One is personality type, largely skews to younger, more tech savvy. Circumstance is the second one. So obviously autonomy doesn't always work as well in rural areas or things. So circumstances in terms of someone's commute and really giving that time back. And then the third one is experience. So are you experienced with ADAS systems? Do you have comfort just in terms of giving up things like control? And those three pillars really lead to trust. So again, it feels like kind of like the vaccine right now, where it's going to take that trust, but really personality, circumstance, and experience will drive that consumer adoption.
Akshay, your comments?
Yeah, I fully agree with Jeff's perspectives on the customer acceptance. I think the other interesting point or nuance is going to be regional variation. And I think, here's where the regulations and the consumer acceptance will be kind of tied at the hip, so to speak. We're seeing, greater interest coming from areas like China and less interest coming, ironically enough, in areas like the United States. So I think, regulation and the customer perceptance of regulation will also, skew the results, so to speak, of how adoption will play in. And I think the other big thing is the technology choices. I think the cost and kind of that cost benefit, the willingness to pay, if they're going to be LiDAR based and, heavy on technology and heavy on hardware, and going to be potentially increasing the price of the vehicle by several $1,000s, that's going to have a big effect on customers and whether they're willing to pay for the features. And then the final thing, the third point I'd like to make is, getting folks to try this feature and the software involved is going to be key for getting acceptance. And just personal experience, I'm an old school car guy. I like naturally aspirated rear drive vehicles, but trying some of these systems really convinced me of the kind of capabilities that they have. I think getting folks into the dealerships and into these trial modes will really help shift the perception.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's take a couple more questions I see on my Q&A here. What is the current regulatory framework? Are EVs even legal? I mean, Jeff and Akshay, please take the...
Maybe Akshay can go first on this one, Bhavesh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Happy to do so. Yeah. So right now it's really unclear, and we're seeing a couple areas where automakers or maybe one automaker is really cutting it close, so to speak. In many cases, this is at a regional level in the United States, and so you have state-by-state variants, even if county-by-county variants on what is possible. You see in the recent article, this was almost a month ago, where Consumer Reports combined and kind of compared the GM or Cadillac Super Cruise with Tesla's Autopilot, and you saw GM edge out there. And one of the biggest things there was the kind of policing the customer, for lack of a better term. GM has taken it quite seriously with their systems of certain roads only, visibility and driver visibility needs to be present, and they're going to monitor that actively. Versus Tesla's can take in a little bit more of an open road approach. They say you can't use this autopilot systems off highway, but it's possible to do so. The vehicle knows that you're on local roads, but it's still possible to do and use their autopilot on local roads. You see that Tesla doesn't require eyes on the road, like the GM system of kind of seeing your eyes and where they're pointing. And you see people fooling that with as simple devices as oranges they stick into their steering wheel to simulate weight. And there's not a lot of pushback. Then the final thing you see is this kind of prototype phase or beta phase where Tesla is rolling out beta applications of their full self-driving to select vehicles. Now, here's where it gets really tricky because, the driver is still responsible and the driver is going to be responsible in the case of an accident, but they're actually pushing the system out to users on the road. So I think it's quite blurry and it's quite varied, especially in the United States, county by county and region by region.
Okay.
Yeah, Bhavesh, I would just agree with Akshay's.
Go ahead, add on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think why you've seen especially California and Arizona really take the lead is the weather's great, largely flat in many of those areas. And I think the one addition I'd make to Akshay's point is just, many autonomous vehicles will be geofenced to start. So we're not going to have autonomous vehicles necessarily going everywhere in the United States or globally on level 4. But the reason why you need a geofence is you need high definition mapping, you need good sensor regulation. And then coming back to that AI topic that we just had previously, which was excellent, basically the cars have to learn the environment by driving again and again and again, and really improving those algorithms. So I think, you know, what you've seen from Waymo and others in a place like Phoenix is very tight, geo-fenced environments where they feel like they can operate safely.
Okay, I think we'll end it here. I know there are a lot of questions. If you can stay on, and we can always can address it on the chat. Thank you very much, Akshay and Jeff. I'll pass it on back to Anu.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bhavesh.
gentlemen, for such important and crucial work around breaking the changing mindset and inculcating the importance of new future of transportation. Appreciate your insights and truly, truly appreciate the work that you're doing. All right, so now we are to the fun side, especially fun because you're going to see some really cool young minds. The whole world is talking about STEM, isn't it? And the need to innovate, excite, and practice. So, what you're about to witness is a range of scientific and technological young, curious minds showcasing some of their brilliant works. The future clearly belongs to them. We all know it. Let's bring back Piyush Malik, ASEI Silicon Valley chapter president and content chair for this convention, a STEM advocate who has led the digital transformation of ASEI YTE program for the virtual era in the current format. And joining him as co-hosts are two brilliant minds, Amrish Chopra, Silicon Valley board member and senior engineering director at VMware, and Michigan's very own Muthu Sivanandam, ASEI Michigan board member and energy material solutions leader at Dassault Systems. The screen is all yours, guys.
Thank you, Anu. Amrish and Muthu, hopefully you are on camera as well. I can't see you guys, but the kids are all ready. And audience, are you ready for some real practical examples of young minds applying their mind to problems of day-to-day life? So we have done this YTE a bit differently this time. We've asked in round 1 attendees to submit their entries, and out of those submissions, we've selected top 6. And I'm going to play their videos, and the judges will ask a question or two after that. Amrish and Muthu are going to help me with that. And in case the videos don't play, we will resort to the old school method. And the students I want to name are Divya Venkatraman, Ojas Karnavat, Nidhi Matihali, Jyoti Rani, Isha Jagadish, and Manan Patel. And we will see how the screen sharing works. So let me try my video playing skills. Screen sharing. All right. So first, I'm going to try this thing from Isha Jagadish.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me here today. My name is Isha Jagadish, and today...
Everyone is able to listen properly?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I will be telling you about the award-winning project I worked on and entered this past year in the Synopsys Science Fair, improving awareness of the visually impaired with a wearable device using computer vision, AI, and a voice-driven app. So first, a little bit about myself. I love to utilize technology to help people. In fact, that's what has driven me these past few years and continues to drive me today. Since my middle school years, I have been working on science projects that help people. In 8th grade, I worked on a genomics project that identified certain ethnicities that were more susceptible to certain diseases. Similarly, in my 9th grade year, I built a device to help the visually impaired become more aware of their surroundings using AI technology. Finally, this past summer, I furthered my AI and genomics knowledge by working on a research project aimed to evaluate the genetic risk factors behind Parkinson's disease. In each case, my goal was to help certain groups of people. But on a more personal note, I love baking and playing badminton. So in layman's terms, here's a quick overview of my project. The goal was to design a smart voice assistant device called Smart Assist for the visually impaired that could sense an individual's surroundings and alert them when something was near them, which would ensure their safety. So some of the objectives of Smart Assist were that it had to be low cost, so it would be affordable, able to work offline and not need to be connected to Wi-Fi all day, attachable to a probing cane while also being lightweight and wearable. And finally, Smart Assist should be able to work indoors and outdoors. So after setting these goals, I began to acquire the components and build the actual device. So to the left, you can see a basic 2D view of Smart Assist. The outer case is a 3D printed custom-made case that I made myself in my engineering lab at school. Inside, you can see the Raspberry Pi, which is the main component of my project, along with its accessories. My software, written in Python and utilizing AI, runs on the Raspberry Pi. It continuously detects motion video from the camera and takes in commands from the microphone to process and alert the user on their surroundings through the speaker. So to the right, you can see the approximate cost of Smart Assist. So this price is pretty affordable compared to other products similar to mine, and it also performed with greater than 90% accuracy on most common use cases. So now we can see a short clip of Smart Assist in action. Hey Iris, what's in front of me?
Bicycle, 9 to 13 feet.
Pretty cool, right? So my vision for achieving greatness through science and engineering is to continue to build upon my work with the goal of helping the maximum number of people. The graph here depicts my vision. I have barely scratched the surface in science and engineering up until now, and I'm looking forward to rapidly learning and experimenting more to amplify the impact. When I ask myself, how can I do this? A couple ideas come to mind. First, living in a pandemic has taken a social and economic toll on our society, and I would never want this to happen again. This is why I am driven to contribute in my own way towards engineering an effective pandemic prevention and containment system. Another idea is a way to build a better bridge between research and its practical use in the field. For example, much of the cutting-edge research we do never actually reaches the underprivileged communities around the world. It's either too late or too expensive. This is why I would like to not only work on impactful engineering projects that are cost-effective, but also seek out active partnerships with NGOs who can help quickly deliver them to those in need. Thank you so much for listening to my video entry, and I hope you consider me for the YTE 2020.
All right, Amrish and Muthu, one of you, please get started with the question.
Yeah,
1 minute.
I have a quick question. I think we talked about AI earlier. How are you planning to get the training data for this? Because there's so many objects in the world. How will you be able to train and make sure it works across different areas?
Hi, thank you for your question. So the training data that I used for my project Smart Assist was the publicly available repository of images called MobileNet SSD. And so the thing with that is it's annotated, so I already knew the labels of every single image. So I fed the MobileNet SSD data into my Smart Assist model, and that was the training data. So I used publicly available data.
And you will update that data set, I guess, as time goes by?
Yeah, as it learns more and more objects, I'll keep updating that data set.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Muthu?
Yeah, it's a good project. How long did it take for you to conduct this experiment? So far, whatever you submitted.
So I would say that it took me around a couple months actually. So because my project wasn't just building the machine learning model, it was also building the actual device. So to build the device took some time, but I would say to make the actual model plus build the device took me around 1.5 months. And then I also had to train my device. I had to train it on multiple objects, like just at my house. So I would say the entire process took around 1.5 months.
Great. That's it.
All right. If there are no more questions, we can move to the next candidate. Thank you, Isha, for your submission. And we will play the next video in a moment. if I can get it. All right, our next video is from Manan Patel, and I am going to share my screen again.
Hello, my name is Manan Patel. I'm an 18-year-old first-year college student studying electrical engineering at Michigan State University. So first of all, to whoever is watching this, I hope you're doing well right now and staying safe. Anyways, this is the engineering project I would like to showcase today. It is a go-kart that I built from various parts online during quarantine. Not to put the go in go-kart, I have this 200cc Titan engine, which is rated for about 7 horsepower. To make it stop, I use this 6-inch drum brake. For the transmission, I use this GTC torque converter, which can vary the size of these two drive units to create gear ratios between 1:1 and 1:3. Now for this driven axle, I have this 40-tooth sprocket, which is connected to the 10-tooth sprocket in the torque converter, which has a 1:4 final drive ratio. So although this gearing only gives the car an approximate top speed of 25 miles per hour, this low gearing allows it to have enough torque to climb the various hills around my house. And to further facilitate this off-road capability, I have these 12.5-inch knobby tires. And as you can see here, it has this black paint job with these beautiful yellow splatters. And I've covered it in 2 layers of clear coat to give it more protection. So yeah, that's basically all the technical details of my go-kart. And now for my vision for doing good for society through engineering, I would like to talk about it from an automotive perspective because I'm pursuing a career in the automotive industry. So I feel like the future is electric cars, basically. But right now, they only consist of approximately 2.6% of global car sales, new car sales worldwide. I would like to see this number increase dramatically because electric cars are a win-win for both man and nature. Since they pollute less and are more efficient than gas cars, electric cars are better for the environment. And since they cost less to maintain and have much less frequent maintenance, they're a win for the consumer. So my vision for doing good would basically be making electric cars more mainstream. So thank you for watching and stay safe.
Thank you, Manan. And Manan is a university student, first year, freshman, Michigan State. And Muthu, why don't you go first?
Yeah, Manan, great work, especially hands-on work, all the way from our local soil here, Michigan. So one question I have is, where would your prototype looks good. How do you connect that to your real passion of going towards building electric vehicles?
Yeah, so actually I just built a gas one first because that is easier, but my plan is that I'm gonna make an electric one probably sometime this summer when I get time, because right now I'm in college, so I'm pretty busy. So yeah, that's like kind of the next step, if that makes sense.
Sure, great.
Amrish? Oh, sorry, Muthu, are you done?
No, Amrish, go ahead.
Yeah, Amrish.
Hey, Manan, awesome. This is actually a very good job. What's the biggest challenge you faced when you're building this? What did you face like the hardest of all the components that you
Honestly,
had to do?
the hardest part isn't like actually building it per se. It's more of like finding the parts, like making sure that all the parts like fit together and they connect properly and all that, like figuring out like the size for everything.
Awesome. And then how much gas does it take and how far can it go?
The gas tank is about 1 gallon, and I haven't measured like the distance that it can go, but I've the most I've run it continuously is about 2.5 hours.
That's a
So,
lot. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
Great
job.
Thank you, Manan. And we will move on to our next participant if there are no further questions for him from the judges. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I will get on to once again sharing my screen and. Technical glitch here. I'm facing. All right. Our next student is Ojas Kanawat from Monte Vista High School, and he is in the 11th grade, and he has a file that he has shared with me, not on YouTube, so it is a bit different. I hope this plays. And
hello, I'm Ojas Kanawat, and I will talk about rethinking emergency mass notification systems. So, the problem. Imagine you're in a mall and there's a fire. So you hear the fire alarms and you're confused where to go. So you can choose the path you came into, you can choose the one that's nearest to you, or you can choose one that's really familiar. But either way, you don't really know where the fire is. So maybe you get there and you find out the fire is right at the door. Our current fire alarms only tell us that there is a fire. It does not tell us where it is. And that's a big problem. And so we try to fix this. So the requirements of such a system would be threefold. You need to detect and communicate in real time. You need to be able to provide these safe routes at every point. And you need to be able to function without clouds and short circuits trigger fire. And it needs to be an easy system. Let's talk about my solution. It involves smart displays, Bluetooth Low Energy network, like a mesh network where everything's connected to everything, and Raspberry Pis connected to smart displays. So smoke detectors, Bluetooth Low Energy, Raspberry Pi, and displays. First, to install this, so put up all the components, set up the BLE network, and put the display screens, and input all the information into a form. Then when there is a fire, it detects the fire, it communicates to everyone, it computes the best route, which takes into account where the fire is, and it displays it to the public. So that's the gist of the system. I'm going to run through a quick demo of this. So this is a really simple map that I use just to show that it works. I'm using a Raspberry Pi. So first I go and set up on the input form. So I put in random numbers as 1001, 1002, etc., and right and left. And then I run the other device, which knows the IP of where to connect to get all that input information. Now, these are the exit routes. My computer is going to be the smoke detector, and I turn the Bluetooth on. So now it knows that my computer is on, the smoke detector is on, so it blocks the first two routes, then I turn it off, and it's back to normal. Just as it should be, because the smoke detector is saying no now. So that's the gist of it. I've been working on some other research projects. I've been in research intern for Stanford's Graduate School of Education program, where I worked on a project called Qubits. I'm still assisting there for about a year now. I've been working on a conclusion helmet for UCSB summer research academies since the summer, and I'm also involved in leadership at school class office, club presidencies, and other outside organizations as well. So I want to end at this note. My theory of how we make progress lies at an intersection of brilliant leadership and technological genius. So you combine them, and I envision greatness by applying my passion for change and my curiosity to explore and innovate and combine them, aiming to turn my ambitious visions into reality. Thank you for having me.
Great job, Ojas. Amrish, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think great project, very useful. I can see in case of emergency. Do you think this is an independent solution, or is it part of like a home work automation system? I'm thinking maybe part of your smoke detector or something? What do you think?
Right now it is independent, but what I envision is in the big picture, this works for fire alarms. I envision similar things for earthquakes, school shootings, gas leakages, things like that, where you have a network of cameras that can see what is happening in case of an emergency. Because the big issue right now is you don't know where to go. You just know something happened. So in the long run, I envision a lot of these systems for various different problems integrated into kind of one big system to monitor emergencies.
Yeah, I think state of California has an emergency alert system already. It would be a good part of that. So awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Muthu?
Hi. Good showcase. So is there a range where your experiments do work, the project works within a certain range right now, the physical distance?
So the cool thing about it is I'm using a BLE mesh network, which means there's a lot of these small beacons connected to each other. So it can actually run at any distance because if you have enough beacons, because each one will tell the next couple what to do. So it will run at a very large distance, even in stadiums, malls, anything like that. And also if the fire destroys one unit, each beacon will tell multiple units. So communication will still happen. So it will work over almost any distance as long as you have enough.
So you have scalability kind of built into the design.
Yes.
And I want to ask you one more generic question. What are the lessons you learned by undergoing the research as well as this overall project?
I used Raspberry Pis and I'd never really played with them before. So it was, I was under the impression that computers are kind of like, what we see on a laptop and on our phone, but nothing that's like this tiny that we can do so much with. So that was, it kind of changed my perspective towards looking at engineering as a whole. Just the fact that we can do so much with so little physically. And it also kind of gave me a lot of crucial research lessons, which I applied throughout, even though it was an engineering project, how you test things, the kind of mindset that a researcher should have, it's kind of what this helped me with.
Great. Good job.
Great job.
Thank
you.
Madhu,
did you have any other question?
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on.
Thank you.
And I am having a challenge once again. Let's make sure I go out of this. And all right. So our next student, and I failed to mention earlier, but Isha Jagdish is a 10th grader at Saratoga High School. And I already talked about Manan and Ojas. Next student is Saratoga High School student Nidhi Matihali, and she is.
Hi everybody, I hope you guys are having a great day so far. My name is Nidhi Matihali and I'm a sophomore at Saratoga High School. My synopsis project was an application to help the visually impaired read money using machine learning. Did you know that there are over 285 million people in the world who are blind? And one of them is my grandfather. Last summer, he told us about how he accidentally gave 500 rupees instead of 50 rupees to a vendor, which raised concerns because he spent 10 times more than he needed to. After hearing about this, I decided to create an application that helps the visually impaired read money in third world countries. After doing some research, I realized that the only options in the market right now are apps and the iBill, both of which are very expensive. I also visited and spent some time with the students in the Sri Ramana Maharishi Academy for the Blind in India, who told me that the best way to solve this problem would be to create a cheap, robust, and effective way to read money using a physical prototype. This is because apps on phones are hard to use because of their small screens. I looked into ways to do this and decided that the best way would be to use a Raspberry Pi and a Pi camera, which would only result in $20, whereas the iBill is $220 and smartphones are at least $500. The next step was to create the machine learning model, which I took two approaches for. The first approach was using the Google Vision Auto ML. However, Although the accuracies were over 80%, I decided not to go this route because the device has to be connected to the internet in order to work, or have its public Wi-Fi, which could cost over $30 a day. And since we want this to be the cheapest solution possible, this would definitely not be applicable for the situation. Therefore, I decided to create my own model. Using Keras and TensorFlow, I created 5 models with accuracy 20%, 35%, 44%, 70%, and my latest and most accurate, which is 85%. The main differences were the number of training and testing images, the number of layers, the different filters, as well as the different activation functions. Finally, I transferred the model over to the Raspberry Pi. Overall, the prototype takes a picture using the Pi camera and predicts the denomination using the model. Currently, I am working on the hardware side of the project and looking into making this device compact and wearable using the Raspberry Pi Zero, a camera module board, and an audio breakout. My next steps are to visit different blind schools and improving model accuracies, which I'm also currently working on by creating models using support vector machines and Cannon algorithms. Overall, using the skills that I have and will develop, I want to create different products that help our community. In terms of achieving greatness through STEM, I want to give back to the community and to the less fortunate and inspire people by showing them that we can all make a change. Next, I will show you a short clip of my device working. Here is a video showing how the device works. As you can see, my friend is holding up a $1 bill to the device, and we are using the terminal to run the program. The first part of the video showed how the front side of the $1 bill was clearly recognized by the program. Now, we are testing with the back side of the $1 bill, and as shown, this dollar bill is also being recognized. Thank you for listening and have a great day.
All right, wonderful use of the creative medium. You showed your demo as well. So by the way, guys, I have to mention Nidhi is also one of our youngest volunteers at ASEI. All right, Muthu, you want to go first?
Sure. So would you, great effort, by the way, and then you have great ideas on STEM. Would you do this kind of work and would you make this as your career as you progress on these research and initiatives?
Yeah, so actually, in the past summer or so, and a little more than that, I've been working with a student at Stanford and a student at Brown in terms of like the mathematical side of machine learning. And because I'm a very avid math competitor, and because of that, I've learned like a lot about like matrices, how matrices affect like machine learning, and how you can like create like more data using matrices and filters, which is actually one of like the biggest parts of my project, which took some time because there's not a whole bunch of pictures of dollar bills out there. And so I've been learning a lot about like the math side of things. And also, since my grandfather is blind himself, and I've met a lot of people who are blind or visually impaired, this is a topic that's very close and very near and dear to me. So I would totally consider making this my career. And I'm actually continuing this as my synopsis project this year, and hopefully doing projects like these in the following years.
Great. Good luck. Amrish, over to you.
Awesome. This is actually very good. One of the quick things I had was, what's the hardest part you felt when you built all this? Like, it was the hardware, software, what challenges did you face? And what challenges do you see when you try to miniaturize this, right? It can't be it has to be small enough that it's like, you're saying stick it on the head, on the sunglasses or something. So what challenges do you see there?
I think one of the biggest challenges that honestly nobody talks about, but it's there, is the number of times you failed. Man, I failed so many times for this project. For one of my most recent model, I tried over and over and over again. And even like with software, the other day, I was working on trying to make sure like my ESP32 module, which is this CAM module over here, which I'm using currently, is small enough and it actually like accurately gets it with like real-time data and everything. And I failed. It took me a week to figure out how to do it. And nobody talks about it, but it's there, and it's that hard work and effort that actually helps you get to your end line and actually helps you get to your successes. And also the fact that none of my parents are super into hardware. I've been reaching out to so many people, and sure, like, you can say that you work with somebody, but if there's so much effort that goes into, can you please help me with this? Can you please help me with this? Because I don't know hardware. I didn't know hardware until I even started like working with this project. So that was one of the biggest things. Thankfully, I reached out to Qualcomm recently, and they have a program in which they sponsor projects that young, innovative girls are doing. And so I've reached out to them, and they're helping me with this, which I'm super grateful for.
Awesome. I mean, I think Synopsys is a hardware company, which is actually a good thing. And if you need help.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Nidhi. We'll have to move on to in the interest of time. So our next participant would be where did my screen go? All right, I have to play her. I lost that her video, and this is going to be a challenge. Sorry for the technical issues here, but I will resolve it soon. Our next presenter is Jyoti Rani, a 12th grader about to go into college soon. She's with Oak Grove High School, and here is her submission.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jyoti Rani.
Was it being shown on the screen?
No, we didn't see it.
Okay. All right.
I'm extremely excited to be here today, and today I'll be presenting Project B-Bird, which was distinguished with the International Science and Engineering Fair Grand Prize Award at Synopsys Championship and recognized by a national MIT research program. So let's get right into it. The inspiration behind Project B-Bird came when I heard my uncle back in India had been stranded in his multi-story apartment home for days on end, running out of food, water, medical, and emergency supplies after torrential rain and flooding. Now we know that drones are used in disaster relief to deliver emergency materials, but drones largely rely on GPS, which has a theoretical accuracy of about 10 meters. Unfortunately, due to a cloudy overcast or smoke, which are factors expected to be present in natural disaster scenarios, that 10-meter accuracy is further decreased. Moving forward, when we envision creating an autonomous UAV system, we want to be as accurate as possible to expand the range of actions of the UAV swarm to deliver, to repair and retrieval, in addition to delivery of emergency materials. This is why we decided to take a fresh, local UWB-based approach to UAV tracking. So UWB is based on radio waves, which allows for a 10-centimeter precision, which is 100 times better than GPS. And it's a hardware chip, as you can see here, and it just gave us raw tracking data. So in this project, what we did was we built a full stack software application based on multiple programming languages that provides the following functionalities. It smartly detected and rerouted the drone in case of anomalies, and it was able to plan and simulate both individual drones and swarms. This is a square formation drone, and the user has been able to literally draw out the flight path. That's how interactive the UI is. So we ran multiple test runs on different flight paths and used statistical analysis to determine the measure of accuracy and anomaly detection rate and such. Combining the software with our custom 3D printed hardware design enabled a system to be created that was within 10 to 20 centimeters precise in testing. A UWB-based drone has several other applications as well. One, for example, is indoor navigation in warehouses. The exciting next step for this project is to create a drone swarm that's based on UWB, which requires significantly more funding for sure. So I really believe that the intention behind innovation really deeply matters. Project Beebird could be used to deliver pizzas or deliver life-saving medicine, right? And for me, my vision of how technology and engineering is used and applied in the world is along the lines of manifesting global well-being. I define global well-being as all 7.6 billion world citizens having access to their basic human rights so that they can discover and achieve their full potential as human beings and ultimately find holistic happiness. So that was my presentation. Once again, I was Jyoti Rani, and I thank you for your time.
And Muthu, go ahead.
Yeah, great practical project, Jyoti. One question, I'm not an electronics expert like you, but given all the proliferation of electronic signals everywhere, have you considered any, some kind of interference that you get with this UWB approach?
Absolutely. So first of all, hi everyone. I'm very grateful to be here today. Sorry. And to answer your question, that is a very on-point question about this project. So thank you. The purpose of ultra-wide bandwidth is that because it occupies that bandwidth range, it is kind of more immune to interference with other types of signals in the area. And so that's actually one of the main reasons we chose to use this particular hardware for our project. So that concern should be avoided. That was what we were intending for.
Great.
Yeah, awesome. This is actually a very excellent use of ultra-wide. The hardware that you guys are building, is that like a off-the-shelf that you customize, or you sort of built the whole chip by hand yourself?
Right. So I'd love to clarify that. Yeah, totally. Ultra-wide bandwidth is an existing technology, and for us, one of the main challenges was, so we weren't modifying the ultra-wide bandwidth chips per se. That was not our focus. The challenge for us was to take, the hardware raw data that we're getting from this basic sensor and integrating that with software with a drone system. So that was where the core of the project really lies. And so that was our focus. We did, build the 3D printed cases from scratch and model those for our system because we really wanted to look at it from the perspective of a first responder and what they are going to need to deploy this in a natural disaster scenario as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Awesome. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Jyoti, and on to our last but not the least participant, attendee here. Do we have Divya? Okay. So once again, I need to find her presentation and we will go with that. Divya is a 10th grader at Monta Vista High School, again from Silicon Valley. And
hi everyone, my name is Divya.
All right, it plays and sharing the screen.
I'm Getraman, and I'm a sophomore at Monta Vista High School. I am so excited to share my project about Dietologist, which is an app to classify food products based on user diet choices. I really like to see how science and technology actually impact the world around me because they have so much potential in the future of science, as we'll talk about later in this video. So without further ado, let's get started with my skit about Dietologist, and then let's move on to my app itself and the research around it, and finally ending with my views about science in general. Who are you? I'm a Dietologist. I'm a whoa, where am I? We're in the land of Dietologists. I just want to eat my popcorn though. I think we're going to hear from that. I brought you here to learn about making healthier choices. If you ever come across a food item that you know you should stay away from, yet you consume it anyways, many people can't afford to do this, including my father. He is at a higher risk of diabetes and cardiovascular diseases because of genetic factors. Observing him, I have personally seen how hard it is for him to watch what he eats, especially since packaged foods are very tasty and very easily available. Unfortunately, my grandpa died from a heart attack due to atherosclerosis. If my grandpa had my app when he was alive, He could have maybe even prevented this unfortunate fate, but I wouldn't want to wish this upon anyone else. So I made my app. If we don't control our nutrient intake, especially sugar and cholesterol, we are exposed to a risk of type 2 diabetes. On the flip side, if we don't control our nutrient intake like saturated fats and cholesterol, we are at a higher risk of atherosclerosis, according to the CDC. Now how to work the app. You can find it on the App Store as well. Once we go to the home screen, we can click the button to set our diet, in this case, no saturated fat. Then we go back home and click the Help button to go to the Help menu, where we can learn about the app and how to use the app as a whole. Then we go back and see that our diet choice has been saved, so we take the picture. Our desired food in this case is popcorn, so we're going to go scan the nutrient label of this food. As you can see, there is saturated fat, so the app should be able to say that this food does not meet the dietary requirements. Now all we need to do is wait for the app to do all the work for us. The app correctly classified the food as not corresponding to the diet, and if we go to chips, since popcorn belongs to chips, we can see that the top alternate was pita chips. That was just a form collected. Now, we can take a picture of the pita chips that was recommended just to make sure that the alternate is correct. Obviously, the user won't have to do this, but this is just to show that the app is accurate. Now, again, we let the app do all the work, and yay, the app accurately classified. Let's talk about nutrition. Now, that's exactly what my app is around, and nutrition can have so many good benefits, especially managing our nutrition. In fact, studies have even found that healthy diets can help with symptoms of depression and anxiety and so much more. And not only this, but nutrition is a critical part of health and development. And better nutrition is related to improved infant, child, and maternal health, stronger immune system, safer pregnancy, childbirth, lower risk of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes or cardiovascular diseases, and longevity. And that's why I feel like not only nutrition, but science as a whole has such a big impact on the community around us. Not only is nutrition such an important fact, but I believe that medicine helps so many people, especially in the pandemic that we're in now, COVID-19. I mean, the vaccines are all developed by researchers. Without research, we wouldn't be able to face this problem like we are right now. Not only this, but I believe that technology in medicine is also a huge area that I think is very underrepresented, but has so much potential. In fact, a large number of digital innovations are revolutionizing healthcare. Like, for example, a scale that can measure your balance and then tell you if you have a risk of falling, or so much more, especially things that are helping in the vaccine development for COVID-19. So I believe that in my views, the future of science, medicine, and technology is immense. So why not get started with this app to help nutrition and help children and adults all over the world. Thank you.
All right, that's very creative and definitely very interesting, and need of the hour, need of the day is nutrition and staying healthy. So with that, Muthu?
Yeah, good job, Divya. So my question is, what part of the project you felt was important but you couldn't cover, that you would probably add it to the project you've done so far?
Yeah, so this project, like I had to look at it in a very kind of creative aspect when I created it, because not only did I actually create the app, which was obviously the major chunk of the project since that is pretty much the project, but I also conducted a study afterwards where I had I believe about 25 human participants who used the app for a period of 2 weeks. And then when they were using the app, I had them fill out a form each time they completed using the app for their meal. And then I collected the data to prove that my app actually had 95% accuracy. So I think that was a big chunk of my project. But to answer your question on what I could have improved on, and I actually have done that now, but obviously there's always things you can tweak to enhance the UI and the user experience, the UX of the app. But also I believe that it could be cool if rather than just providing alternates for foods once you input what type the food is. So essentially, if you wanted to eat popcorn, but it said popcorn doesn't correspond to your diet because popcorn has saturated fat, you would have to say that popcorn belongs in the chips category so that the app will tell you, oh, pick pita chips instead. However, something that would be cool is if the app skipped the whole aspect of choosing your category and it directly went from popcorn to pita chips. But yeah.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay, awesome job, Divya. I think you answered my question, because one of my questions was, how about providing alternatives, right? I mean, if I eating something, and you can take that into account with the you have ability for the health app, like Apple has the health data. If you match that to what they're eating, provide them alternatives, that would be awesome. What's the hardest part, I guess, you felt in this? I mean, is this the AI portion, or is it the building the app? What was the hardest?
Yeah, so I mean, before I completely answer that question, I do definitely want to echo, I believe, Nidhi's answer about failure. Because I remember when I did create the app, I was emailing many professors who like to kind of get like feedback on the nutritional aspect, because obviously I was able to do the technology part, but like science is always really complicated, and you definitely need expert opinions in science, especially. And I had to email like 10 like thousand, okay, that's an exaggeration, but a lot of professors, and I finally got a response from a Stanford professor. But I think another complication was learning how to code in the first place, because I know how to do Java and JavaScript. However, to code an app, you need Xcode and Swift. And although there are many similarities, which did make it easy to learn it a little bit, you still have to go through like that whole book and then learn how to code basically a whole new language. And I had to do it in 2 weeks, because they only give you like a certain amount of time to actually complete the app for Synopsys Science Fair. And I also had to do my study. So yeah, it was definitely complicated to learn that code. But yeah, that was probably one of my biggest challenges.
Awesome, great job.
Yeah. I think this is very, very creative, very well used time. We had a limit of 4 minutes for each recording, and you did 3 minutes 49. So here is the poll, which has been put out there. This is the audience choice piece. We want to combine the results from judges, audience, as well as from the round 1 that we did earlier. And I want to make sure we have everyone's votes in, and the names appear in the order in which the presentations were made. And as soon as I have at least 70% folks who have voted, I would want to show on the screen. Meanwhile, please try to this thing vote here. I am seeing. All right. I can't wait more than this. All right. So 1 minute is over, and I am going to end the poll, and I will end the poll here and share the results on the screen for a brief second. If this is by no means, this is an audience choice piece. So definitely audience vote went for Isha, and we can see Jyoti was also liked by the audience, and then Ojas, but in that order. But I'll just stop sharing here, and I want to make sure you all are aware that this conference is happening tomorrow as well. Thank you all the attendees today, as well as all the participants of YTE and the judges. And I want to give the control back to the host here. Anu, you want to come on?
All right, thank you so much. And I just wanted to say how I enjoyed this session, especially with all these young minds. I think each and every one of you are winners, because each of you have come with such elegance in terms of your presentations, with terms of your knowledge. I think you guys are all winners, and please go and conquer the world, because I really, really want to see you all succeed. And now, attendees and viewers, and see what happens when you spend time with engineers, technologists, and all these lovely, brilliant young minds. Time definitely flies. So please allow me to welcome the very endearing Rakesh Patel for his closing remarks. Rakesh is the ASEI National Treasurer and National Convention co-chair, and comes with an amazing background and deep experience in the automotive industry. Rakesh, on to you.
Thank you, Anu. Awesome job on keeping us on track and making all the sessions more enjoyable. here with Bhavesh Joshi, who is a co-chair as well as ASEI vice president, who helped us to put this convention, for this year. All the presentations are really very informative, excellent, and educational. Though my favorite part was the YTE, and I do agree with Anu. All the YTE participants are winners, and they have done awesome and brilliant jobs. So a big round of applause to YTE. So at this point, I'd like to thank you, all the keynote speakers, technical speakers, session owners, my team who put this show together, as well as all the volunteers who made this convention possible. Though we would like to apologize to Deval Desai as well as other keynote speaker for pausing them on the time constraint. We all engineers and we had to be on time. But we can see what we can do for tomorrow. Before I hand over to Bhavesh Joshi for his final remarks, I would like to say thank you to all the participants. Great jobs, great questions. And if your questions are not answered, please send it to us at info@aseigusa.org, and we see if we can help get back to you. So be safe and healthy. And as Piyush mentioned, there is a second day tomorrow, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Back to Anu.
All right.
Anu, before you close, I had promised the kids that there is a surprise guest who is going to show up, and there is a video message for the surprise guest. So if you allow me to share my screen,
absolutely.
I will try to do that. Good afternoon, Dr. Sam Petroda. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you once again. I clearly recall you as our ASEI Lifetime Achievement Award winner in 2016, and I'm delighted that you, as my mentor, are present here to talk to the ASEI members. Please give your comments.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for thinking about me.
So, Dr. Petroda, you have inspired a whole generation of engineers while growing up, and I've shared my story with you how my first conference I ever attended after graduating from college, you were the chief guest and you inaugurated that conference. So I'm very super thrilled here to be talking to you. Do you have any message for our audience, young and old, who are primarily scientists, engineers, and technologists, and some of them have gone on to become serial entrepreneurs as well? Any message for our viewers?
I think the profession you are in, engineering science, is one of the most important and noble profession you can ever get in. So I think you all need to be complimented because you are indeed in the forefront of doing good for the society. You will make a contribution, you are making a contribution, especially engineers of Indian origin in America have a huge contribution to make, because whatever truth you find in science and technology, it is applicable to the mankind across the world. Even if you do something in America, it doesn't remain in the borders of America. It becomes universal. To me, the beauty of science is that the truth you find is applicable for humanity. As opposed to religion, when you truth you find, it is only good for you as an individual. So I am delighted that you all have decided to come together to celebrate your successes, to celebrate your accomplishments. And I'm proud to be one of your colleagues. You know, I've been in America for 55 years as an engineer. And I have seen population of Indian engineers in America grow and make huge contribution. And my compliments to all of you. And we are all very proud of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your inspiring words. Sam Pitroda, the father of Indian telecom modernization. Here he is. And thank you very much, sir. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. I'd like to bring all the ASEI members behind
Over
the
to you,
screen
Anu.
rocks. Yes, thank you so much. I just want to bring all the ASEI members behind the screen rock stars. Why don't you just come show your faces? You've done some amazing work behind the screens. Why don't you come on video? I want to really applaud. I have a big applause to each and every one of you. Hopefully your video is turned on. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for the day, C4D Mortgage. Thank you so much. C4dmortgage.com, and they are located in Troy, Michigan. So all you ASEI members, where are you? Am I seeing all of you? Come on screen. I would like to take this moment to appreciate each of you, and thanks for making our lives better with your engineering and technological minds, because we can't imagine a day without it. And that's why we're celebrating you. So to all the attendees and viewers, hope ASEI has made your Saturday worthwhile. We are at aseiusa.org. Please go ahead, click on it. Just, there's wealth of information there. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow. Stay safe, rest up. And all of you, I think it's great job by ASEI, wonderful. And we're going to bring some inspiring speakers and achievers tomorrow as we say cheers to all you wonderful engineers. So ciao guys, and have a blessed and safe one. Take care.
And thank you. You did an awesome job.
Thank you very much. All of you rock. So see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you, team.
Thanks, Anu. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.